Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, we have a full house tonight. I just want to remind everybody here in the audience, you are being recorded. We record all of our board meetings. It's published on YouTube under NCTV. You can see all of our board meetings there, so it's just a reminder to everybody here. And there's people watching you at home. So, all right, the board did meet in closed session this evening, and Trustee Aguila will report out our closed session items.
Good evening. So the board did meet. And first item we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54956.9. That was conference with legal counsel, pending litigation, Coalition to Save San Marin versus Novato Unified School District, Marin County Superior Court, case number CIV 1702295. And that was information only. Second item we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, gave direction. And the third item discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, conference with labor negotiations, Chris Koskas, Deputy Superintendent, Human Resources and Strategic Development, Employees Organization, California School Employees Association, that's CSCA, information only.
All right, thank you.
That's it.
Approval of our agenda this evening. The agenda stands as is. We might, as we move along, we might move things a little bit, but for right now, we're going to keep it as is. We're going to see how the timing goes. So. Okay.
I'll move the order of business, Madam President.
All right, so we have first by Trustee Millerick, a second by Trustee Nell. All those in favor to approve the agenda? 7-0. And if anybody would like to make a comment on any item on the agenda or not on the agenda, please fill out a blue card. I already have a few here. And the blue cards are located in the table in the back, and bring it up to Sally, and she will bring it to me, and we'll put you where you belong on whatever the item is or not, or if it's on the agenda or not on the agenda. We have a certain spot for everything. So you have 3 minutes to speak once I call your name to come up, and we have a timer right there. Please keep within those 3 minutes. If you do not, I will kind of ask you to wrap up at some point. So please do so. And you come up right up to the podium and speak there. Okay, consent items. Does the board like to pull anything under consent? You have some amended items. You have some minutes at your table. And you have item 15K, which is the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee applicants. We had some misspelling of some names, and we just corrected that on the cover sheet. So there's 3 amendments. 2 of them are the minutes. And the minutes were just some minor things, nothing.
Prepared to move the consent agenda as amended.
Madam President, I'd like to pull item G, please.
G, okay. 15G is pulled by Trustee Cooper. And I have a first. Anybody else with any pulling? No? Okay, so I have a first by Trustee Nell. Yeah, okay. I need a second for consent. Okay, Trustee Millerick. So this is approval of the consent agenda with the amended items of the board minutes for March 5th and March 12th, and the amended item of 15K, and all those in favor? 7-0. Okay, and I would just like to, in regards to 15K, I want to thank Lisa Swanson, Scott Keene, and Alan Harris, and I saw Alan here tonight. Hi. And for stepping up and being on this committee. We really appreciate it. This is, again, a committee of citizens of Novato and different aspects of what they do. It's a great thing to have, and it's an oversight committee that looks in on our parcel tax and how we spend our funds, and we really appreciate that. This board appreciates that, so thank you. We did lose 2 members who stepped down one of them, due to certain circumstances, one of them is Diane Gasson, who stepped down from our parcel tax. She's in a little bit better position now on our school board.
That's a
And-
matter of opinion.
And Denise McIntyre stepped down because she is actually an employee of this district, so that she could not serve her term on there. So I just want to thank those two, Diane and Denise, for serving on the parcel tax committee. All right. Now the most important thing is we have Pleasant Valley here tonight. I see you guys sitting in the front row. I guess we better do good, be kind. Is your principal here tonight?
So, good evening, Board of Trustees and Mr. Hogaboom, and good evening to all of you parents and children. Thank you all so much for coming. I did write notes because I always forget. But I am Dana Sedan. I'm the principal at Pleasant Valley, and I am so excited to be here this evening to introduce Pleasant Valley's student presentation to the board. And I just want to do a really quick preface to it, because this year PV became a do good, be kind school. I know that several other schools have done that here, but largely they did it because of the passion and enthusiasm of some of my staff members. Last year, a few of my staff members began wearing the Do Good, Be Kind t-shirts in honor of and to support a parent who is going through cancer. And their efforts became such a wonderful community building activity that many people became involved in it. And then we thought, gosh, it would be really cool to have students participate in it. And as a result, we started it this year with the kickoff of the Do Good, Be Kind Assemblies that was facilitated by Chris Kurtz, who is the founder. So we purchased the Do Good, Be Kind t-shirts for all the students and for all the staff members. And then every month we have an assembly where we either celebrate ways that we can do good and be kind to ourselves or to others or to the world around us. And so the students here tonight are going to share some of the things they did. But it was actually Angela Villaluna was one of those teachers who began the whole thing. So I just wanted to acknowledge her for bringing that to PV. And also some of the kids are going to be sharing things that they were inspired by Diane Gaston to do. So I thought that would be great. So Mrs. Villaluna, would you come on up, please?
Thank you, Board, for having us. We have a short presentation for you in regards to all the wonderful things that we are weaving into our school of Do Good, Be Kind. And I have some of my fourth graders here today just to present to you some wonderful things that we are doing in our classroom. So hope you enjoy.
Our Do Good, Be Kind focus for February has been doing good and being kind to others. One thing that our class does each day is to recite a class creed. A creed is a set of beliefs which help guide someone's actions. We believe that if we work hard to be kind to ourselves, we are better at working to be kind to others.
Gandhi once said, the best way to find yourself is to lose in the service of others.
We will now recite our class creed.
I believe in myself and the ability to do my best at all times. I am responsible for my life and for all my actions. I was somebody when I came in, and I will be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education I get here. I will do my best and not waste this day, for this day will come no more.
Next, we would like to explain each part of our class creed and what it means to us.
I believe in myself and the ability to do my best at all times.
What I think that means is you should always believe in yourself and always try hard even when something is difficult.
I am responsible for my life and for all my actions.
I think it means you're responsible for your own decisions and actions. Not anyone else can decide what you want to do with your life.
I was somebody when I came in, and I will be a better somebody when I leave. We think it means
That when you walk into your classroom or you walk into your job, you might not be the best or you might not be ready. But when you walk out, either if you learned something new or got better at something, you'll never walk out without succeeding.
I'm powerful and I'm strong.
I think I am powerful and I am strong means that you're powerful to help yourself through hard times and you're strong to help other people through
deserve the education I get. I think that means that you should make the best of your education.
I will do my best and not waste this day, for this day will come no more.
I will live that means to try your best every day and make the most out of your day, because the day will never come back again.
In February, we also celebrated the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Fourth grade read an interview with his granddaughter, Yolanda Renee King, and learned how she was inspired by her late grandfather's words and work in her everyday life. It is Yolanda's wish to make the celebration of her late grandfather a day to serve, where people get out into their community and give back and help people in need. Here are a few stories of what we did on the day of service. On day of serve, I went to the Humane Society to give the dog toys I made to the animals who don't have much, the animals in need. On the day of serve, I sold lemons and oranges. All the money I earned, I sold to charity. What we did for the day to serve was we got a friend and we went around the neighborhood and picked up trash to help it stay healthy. And what I did was also take a friend around town to help the environment stay clean, safe, and healthy. What I did all day to serve was run around and clean the leaves out of the garbage baskets.
Let's continue to do good and be kind to ourselves, around our school, and our community, and push that love around the world.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Can you guys, can we have a photo of all of you? You can stand up here and face your parents, because that's the people who want that photo. Maybe have 2 rows.
Yeah, 2 rows, you guys.
2 rows of the students, shorter in the front, obviously, taller in the back, and the teachers and the principal, whoever wants to be in it. There we go. Perfect.
Wait for me.
Yes. Very nice. More photos, more photos.
Good job. Trustee Aguila would like to make a comment.
I just wanted to ask a question, and that would be, well, first I'd like to thank Brittany Kurtz and Chris Kurtz for creating this Do Good Be Kind campaign, and our principal also at Rancho who also started it. And I wanted to ask the kids, or maybe the principal, how do you guys feel when you did the services? How did you feel? Encouraged? That's wonderful. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Pleasant Valley. Nobody wants to stay? Yeah. Yeah.
Anna's holding down the
Yeah.
Sandy, your cheeks open.
It's true, yeah. Okay, let's keep our meeting moving. We're going to do some announcements, and we'll start with our student board members. McKenna or Jimena or whoever wants to start.
Hello. So for the rest of this month, on Friday at lunch, we have our student versus staff soccer game at lunch. And then on Friday night at 7 p.m. is the MSA spring play. And then on the 23rd, there's also a play at 7 p.m. Well, all this weekend, there's a play at 7 p.m. And the crab feed is on the 23rd at 5 p.m. And then on the 27th, there's a spring play, and the 29th, and the 30th, and the 31st. And then on the 30th, there's also an MSA dance show. And on April 2nd, there's a fundraiser at Chipotle from 5 to 9, to get money for our mascot. And then our Students for Change Club is doing a survey to better understand how students acquire vape pens. So, yeah, that is all.
Thank you.
I'm Jimena Lara from San Marin. So next week is election week. So every student from each class will be running for ASB elected positions. So I think we have freshmen going up against each other. And next week will also be a spirit week. And then this Thursday is Project Exhibition Night. It's an opportunity to see students' classroom projects as well as receive club information and college and career information. The San Marin PTSA is screening the film Angst tonight, and it started at 6:30 in the gym. The film highlights teen anxiety, and it also is followed up with a discussion on the important topic. Bring Change to Mind Club has teamed up with leadership and will be putting on a kindness/wellness week that will take place within the span of 2 weeks, and it will be held the week of April 22nd and the following week, April 29th. And then this weekend, there's a musical, and it will be in the Student Center.
Thank you.
I'm DJ from Marin Oaks. We recently got a recording studio that's set up and running. We are also getting new students next Monday at the start of the new quarter. Today, the whole school went to go see a play called The Who and the What, which was about a girl who immigrated to America, and she can't get married until her sister gets married because that's, I guess, the rules in Islam. And we were also discussing the budget cuts at the Student Advocacy Council, and students were worried to see staff cuts because that would greatly impact the performance of students. And so we're just kind of glad that there aren't going to be any staff cuts at Marin Oaks.
Thank you. Trustee Miller? Trustee Nell?
I attended the Joint Legislative Action Committee for the MCOE, the Marin County Office of Education, and the state legislature is back up to its old tricks. One of the things is the late start bill, which we hope all of you will be receiving an email about that. We were successful in getting that removed from consideration last year, but it's back again, and it essentially would be a problem. It eliminates our local control and when we can start our schools in the day. There's a new construction bond in the works, and the governor has proposed some charter school transparency legislation, and the State Board of Education has set up a committee to review this pending legislation and the recommendation, and so there's going to be a 6 months process where they'll be evaluating that. So I'll try to keep you guys posted, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Gasson?
So last week, I participated in the Legislative Action Day, which was part of the CSBA. It's the event coordinated by them. I had the great fortune to actually meet with Mark Levine's office first, with just a couple of other school board members. One was Barbara from Tamalpais, so that was a great opportunity to talk with her about what was going on for them. She actually had a board meeting last Tuesday for the same reasons that we did. And so we, the conversation in that office was really interesting. It was like, basically thinking that things were okay. That was positive because of the governor's proposal that it was, and I'm like, that's great, but we need money. This has gone on for too long. So that was a very productive conversation with the four of us. Then we actually met with Mike McGuire for quite a bit. It was a larger group, and the same four of us, in addition to a few other people from some other, one person was from Petaluma, and then I wish I could remember the county, but it was a large, more rural community, and sitting there listening to how bad things are for them. 62 teaching positions they're not able to fill. They have to close the school, but they can't close it because the nearest school to replace it is an hour away. And so that really stunk in with our conversation with Senator McGuire. So I felt like we were heard, and I think strongly that something needs to change now. So I'm following up with them. I've been asked, actually, I always say it wrong. Levine. His office personally asked me to keep in touch out of the four of us. So I'm going to convey back to him about what's going on in Marin.
Great. Thank you for doing that, for going. Trustee Mack?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Trustee Cooper? No? Trustee Aguila?
Yes. Okay, so on, I went to Hamilton for the open house, and it was, again, very well attended. Parents were there, teachers, principal. They had their annual display of all the grades that are being represented. They had a wax museum. Very, very proud of them. So that was fun to see. Also went to the charter school, and we did a visit, and they had the No One Eat Alone day, and that was on February 14th, so that was perfect timing, and I think kind of goes along with our presentation today. And for the first time, they're doing testing using computers for first graders, second graders, third graders, and so that's very exciting for them. And there is I just want to make an announcement. There is a Dare to Fight Back Against Human Trafficking, and that's coming up on Saturday the 23rd, and it's at the Dominican University, and there's gonna be representatives there that are experts on sex trafficking, including Marin County District Attorney, the San Francisco Assistant DA, the president of Wisdom International, the police department of San Rafael, and so that's going to be this Saturday, the 23rd at from 3 to 6.
Okay, thank you. I attended Hamilton's open house as well, and that was our first school in the district kicking off open houses, so they will happen from now and probably through May, I would assume. So I would encourage, if you are a parent and you have a child going from 5th to 6th or from 8th to 9th, make sure you go visit that school one more time as a parent and with your child, and go check out the school when it's full of parents and kids and all the classrooms are open, and it's a great way to visit schools that way, outside of doing a tour during the day. And I also was able to get to San Jose Middle School. They had their parent-student night for incoming 6th graders, and it's always a great way for a trustee to kind of check in with the school and see what's happening outside of the open house or going on a tour during the day. It's just another way of seeing. And they have a Bridges after-school program. It's called Bridges, where the students attending that middle school can go to the program after school, and there's plenty for them to do. They don't have to go home. They can spend their afternoon there, do their homework, or do activities. They also are starting this summer is Aim High, which is a 5-week summer program that'll occur obviously this summer right here, and it kind of gets a student kind of up to speed before they start going into 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. So they have some great programs there. That is it for me. Superintendent Hugo.
Thank you, President Butler. So Saturday night I went to Rancho's Spring Fling that they had at the Country Club, so that was fun. It was a good fundraiser for them. This week I'll be doing helping to fill in for some principals who are gone, so I'll be with Mr. Casper, and keep an eye on Jimena tomorrow at San Marin. Friday I'm filling in for Miss Sedan at Pleasant Valley, so that'll be fun to kind of see what's going on and remember what it's like to be a principal. So thanks.
All right. Okay, we'll move on to our non-agenda public comments. I do have some here. I have Rhett Martino, and then Kaylin Ferguson, and Jasmine Nura. This must happen. Nemo. So those are the first three speakers. So if you could come up. Okay, you have them numbered here, but I usually do, but that's all right. Come up, do whatever you guys. I'm fine with whoever wants to go first, and then just there's five of you, and that's what I have for cards.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and good evening. My name is Rhett Martino, student body president of Novato High School, and I appreciate the opportunity to stand before you for the second time tonight, this time with a group of student leaders from the Novato campus, Kaylin, Jasmine, Georgia, and Madison. My goal now is to help bring attention to the status of wellness support in our community. As somebody who has been working towards achieving wellness for the student body, you can imagine my excitement when I was promised by multiple administrators that we were going to open a wellness center in late March or early April. However, this promise has yet to be acted on by them. We are the Student Advocacy Council, and we speak for the benefit of the mental health of every student in the Novato Unified School District.
For years, we have been fighting for this initiative, working together to bring mental health awareness and resources to our campus in the shape of outside organizations, awareness weeks, and much, much more. Mental illnesses are sweeping through the generation of teenagers at unprecedented rates. 1 out of every 5 students in our generation suffers from mental health problems or mental illness. The perfect ground base to start addressing, or at least try to help support these issues, are on the high school campuses nationwide. School is an integral part of a young adult's life. It's where we spend most of our time, meet most of our friends, and encounter most of our issues and problems. The moral priority for every school should be to address the needs and concerns of the student body, the one that establishes and helps and contributes so much of their time and effort towards arts, sports, extracurriculars, community service, and all the aspects that make our high school life just a bit less stressful.
This can happen through the adamant
Can you
publicity.
just announce your name each time, each one of you when you
I'm
come up?
Jasmine.
Okay, thank you.
This can happen through the adamant publicity and implementation of mental wellness resources. One of the biggest problems our campuses face is a total lack of student awareness of available resources. A typical student at Novato High is oblivious to the kind of support our campus can offer, showing a sad lack of successful communication between administration and students. And truly, what we do have is dangerously minimal. Something is better than nothing, but it can never be forgotten that the mental health of your students, our friends, and these parents' children can be considered nothing less than a priority. A movement and a message that should never stop growing, never stop improving, and never be seen as a disposable use of funds.
My name is Georgia. Wellness isn't just something you can cut out of the lives of students. Whether or not our campus has resources, our students will never stop needing help. And the moment you refuse to acknowledge our needs and hear our voices is the moment everything begins to collapse. We have done everything we can to support this movement and make positive action. At this point, there's nothing for us to do except for wait for you, our board, to take on your role as the people with power. We appreciate your support and we need your action.
I am Madison. As an immediate start, physical resources, wherever they may be located, advertised and made aware to students in the form of a portable resource center. At the start of next year or sooner, a permanent space for these resources and a funded staff member to oversee them, which is now more achievable than ever, with the NBI block being an ideal open space to host these resources and become an integrated part of Novato High School. We've told you our needs. Now it's up to you to not only listen, but take action, side by side with us, your students, to make campus life better for the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we can leave a copy of this with you guys
Perfect.
here tonight. If
That'd
you'd
be
like
great.
To,
Yeah.
especially for Miss Agela who left the room.
Yeah.
That'd be great. If
Right.
She could see it. Let's do.
Appreciate that.
Horace.
All right, and we will move on to our first discussion action item, which is approval of the 2018-19 second interim budget report. We have Yancey Hawkins.
I didn't want to cough all over the microphone, so thank you. All right, thank you, trustees. So we're at the second interim, and just to give everybody a quick update of what second interim means, is during our budget year, we adopt our budget in before July 1 of the fiscal year. In December, we bring the first update to the board, which includes all of our updated staffing and enrollment reports, and that has actuals through October 30th of the fiscal year. In March, we bring the second interim report, and that is with actuals through January 31st of each year, and it's the first budget report to include the governor's January proposed budget for the next year. So really, the first interim is really focused on getting all of the details more focused in the current year. And really, when we look at the second interim, it really is it's a jumping off point for where we look at our budgets moving forward. At each time at budget and at both interim reports, the board is required to certify that it can meet its financial obligations, not only for the current year, but the next two subsequent years. We'll get into meeting the needs of the subsequent 2 years a little bit later in the report, as well into the 2019-20 budget solutions. But I wanted to put that into perspective. So the main, this slide includes both the unrestricted and the restricted side of the budget. And the important part that I'd like to reflect on is that net change of $1.135 million. So that is primarily due to the collective bargaining agreement approved with NFT of about impact of about $1 million. And I'll get into the other 100,000, which is the net impact of 2 or 3 other items as we move forward. Since the first interim, our revenues have increased by $1.6 million over the unrestricted and restricted side of the budget. Primarily, that's all on the restricted side of the budget. And so that would be categorical programs, that would be grants that we've received from our PTAs and other groups, as well as some state revenue related to a couple grants that came in that can only be used for very specialized purposes. So the real impacts to the budget was the LCFF funding increase of about $216,000. And that primarily is due to students that are included at our MCOE programs, the county-wide programs, specifically special education programs. It's important to note that as we are in declining enrollment, we are primarily funded by our prior year enrollment. That is for all of our primarily regular enrollment and ADA, but we are funded at the current year for our special education and non-public school ADA. So we are only held harmless from our regular non-SDC and NPS funding. In terms of our expenditures, noting that we had revenues from categorical programs, we have the related expenditures for those programs included in here, so there's no net impact of that. The items with a net impact are primarily 2 items. The about $1 million impact of the collective bargaining agreement that was approved by NFT and the board, as well as a significant increase in our excess cost transfer to services being provided by the Marin County Office of Education. And this is one area that I did want to really take a couple moments to discuss because of the true impact on our budget. Our second interim projection from the County Office of Education, which includes their updated actual costs for the year, as well as our placements within those programs, have increased another $270,000 over our first interim projection. Those first interim projections we're already up almost $500,000 over our 2017-18 actuals. So the total net impact of the increase in special education services being provided by MCOE and the SELPA program, and the SELPA is the group of districts that come together to provide special education services countywide, is over $750,000 this year, which is the largest increase we've seen in over 20 years. In terms of our fund balance is projected at the end of the year to be $7.7 million. Of that, approximately $1 million is sitting in legally restricted, so about $7 million. We also have $3.1 million sitting in our Fund 17 reserve for about a total of about $10 million. That reserve is about 11%. Which will be down again from the 12% that it sat at June 30th of 2018. It's also noted that the $479,000 impact of the classified and unrepresented settlements that will be brought to the board in the near future once ratified will not be included in that, so that will be down a little bit more. So really more in the end of about 10.5% on the ending fund balance from an unrestricted side. When we look at our multi-year projections, primarily the net decrease in the current year in second interim, I do want to focus on this for just a moment. About $4 million of this is use of categorical funding. So we are running about a $1 million deficit on our unrestricted side, which is the important part to always look at. And this multi-year projection includes the proposed budget reductions for 2019-20 already included in that. So even with those budget reductions, we are still projecting a deficit of approximately 1% moving into 2019-20. It's important to note that the difference between that and the earlier projections include the $1.8 million in proposed budget reduction, as well as the impact of those additional special ed costs that were somewhat unexpected from the County Office of Education, for the Marin County Office of Education, as well as the fact that although our enrollment was down 170 students at our CBEDS date, which is the first Wednesday in October, which is the date that we determine how many kids that we have in the school district. That number continued to decline into January. And so our ADA projections have actually gone down a little bit since the first interim because those numbers continue to drop. Now we have seen a little bit of an increase in February and March in terms of our enrollment. The only problem is our ADA only goes through what's called P2 reporting period, which is about the middle of April. So that increase, we're not going to see the full impact of that. So those are the two other impacts other than the budget reductions that are in there. I want to note the difference between the proposed budget savings and the amount that are included in your packet relates to some of those being transfers out to other funds, and those are reflected in the total sources / uses line item on the budget. It's just a classification difference on there. But the total is the $1.8 million. The full $1.8 million is reflected in these multi-year projections. So what are our challenges? A structural deficit of between $2 and $3 million, depending on what the year is that we're looking at. We're going to address a lot of that with the proposed budget solutions, but we still will have if our projections hold out, we will still have additional budget cuts that will be needed in the coming years. We have the ongoing increases to the state-mandated STRS and PERS rate increases. really a slowing of state LCFF funding, which is our primary revenue per student, and our declining enrollment and lower projected birth rates moving into the future. Just an overview of the 2019-20 budget balancing process, and I'll get into this obviously in a lot more detail in the next item. But over the course of the fall and the winter, the district worked through a budget balancing process. We worked with using the basis of the Budget Advisory Committee work of 2017-18, and went through that process, used the items that they had come up with as potential budget solutions, used their process to bring down to a usable tier list of potential cuts, and then went out to our community and looked for survey responses from all of our different stakeholder groups. And we're happy to say that we received over 1,500 responses to that survey of teachers, classified staff, parents, admin, and students. On March 12th, last week, we presented a draft list of budget balancing solutions to this board. The board gave us a little bit of feedback and direction, and we have come back with a revised list of $1.8 million for the board to consider as the next item. The 2018-19 proposed budget solutions are included here. I'll go over those really in some more detail in the next item. But moving forward, the important items, next steps are the board approving the budget balancing solutions tonight. The 2019-20 finalized staffing, we're really finalized preliminary staffing, but what the sites use to build their master calendars off of will be done by the end of March. The results of the special education efficiency review are scheduled to be brought to the board on April 2nd. In May, the governor's May revise is around May 10th every year, and we'll get a really good update on really 2 items or 3 items that we're looking at. Number 1, what the COLA will be for next year. Number 2, whether the legislature and the governor will use non-Prop 98 money to help fund some of our STRS retirement burden. And as well, there was some special education proposals in there that needed some work. And so I think we're going to see some pretty significant adjustments to those. As of right now, those proposals don't have any impact to the Novato Unified School District, but it'll be interesting to see in May if they do. In May, we'll also have the preliminary LCAP and budget brought, and in June, before June 30th, we will bring the final budget and LCAP for approval. With that, I'm happy to open it up to questions.
Okay. Trustee Millerick, then Trustee Gasson.
I think it's on slide 6, if we can go back. There. So this number here, the 4,902,000.
Yes.
That is, so that's in the current year, correct? That period ends in 3 months.
Yes.
So whatever that number is, we're pretty well locked in, no matter what administrative changes we make at this point. We're past a decision-making point to affect those numbers. Is it really $5 million in the red?
So I will say, from
right.
from an unrestricted side, it's at least a $1 million net impact on the unrestricted side. You also have another $1 million that is being transferred over to Fund 17. But to be clear, that money is staying in the system. It's sitting in a special reserve fund. So that's the $2 million on the unrestricted side, approximately. The other amount, basically $2.9 million sit on the restricted side of the budget. Yeah. So those are categorical funds, which we project that we will fully spend down. So one of the items that, to be very clear, is the Lucy Calkins adoption. That was paid for out of lottery funds. Those did not arrive until after July 1st of this year. That $1 million has been spent. There are some other funds that potentially, like our Proposition 39 energy efficiency funds, which may not be technically expended, but we are required to be under contract by June 30th under that. So they will be they will be reserved, and they will be, so we may not spend all of that restricted side, but on the unrestricted side, we're going to see at least a $1 million decrease in our unrestricted budget.
So to be clear, try to clarify that.
Yeah.
It's not that we're going into the red $5 million in the current year. It is the fact that the way the money came in and the way it was cut off between different years, it hits in this year, even though some of that was actually commitments or funding that came in some other time.
Yes.
So we're not overspending our own budget by $5 million.
No.
But, so I look at the next two columns, and I'm gonna say them out loud, the 791,000 and the 1,034,000. This is a case where we're just, in fact, that's projected, so we're overspending our budget still. And did this include the revisions that we're gonna adopt tonight?
Those include the revisions that we're going to adopt
So we're
tonight.
still the wrong way $1 million.
We're still the wrong way about $1 million in our budget.
Okay, so, like I have said in this room multiple times, we have been the wrong way 4 years in a row. We have spent something in the order of $8 million in reserves, and we are, for all kinds of, whatever we chose to spend it on, but we have to change our ways. We need to find, as a board, find a way to fix that $1 million. We cannot go through another year, $1 million the wrong way. So whatever we adopt tonight, I think we're not done. We have to dig back in and find another $1 million. We need to have a budget that's balanced going forward. We are using our reserves, and it's making the community happy, and everybody's getting some wonderful stuff. But the fact is, this county is going to take us over the way we do business. We cannot continue to do this. So there's my, thank you very much for.
Trustee Gasson and Trustee Mack.
So I'll just make a comment about that because I have a couple of other clarifying questions. But I think the bigger thing is not where we cut, what can we do to change that direction in the sense of what, how much faster can we do things to change so that we can be more attractive to families, so that we can keep our teachers, what is there, what are we doing to try to turn this current? Not just making it about what are we going to cut and what are we going to stop spending. What are we going to do to get out of the cycle? If there's anything like, even the housing, I know that that's supposed to take a few years, but can we, that seems like a positive thing if we can look at trying to get that so the teachers have something to see that they could potentially have an opportunity to be living here. That's a positive to, keep teachers here. MSA, if we're doing wrong, we've got a good space coming, get more, I don't know. So I guess my question is, what are we doing on that side rather than looking at what we have to cut? What can we do to, I know we've got this marketing program going, hearing how is that going? That would be great. So that's how I take it rather than looking at, you got to make more cuts. Tell us what we can do to go the other way. So actually, thank you for your presentation, your clarification, because even though I've done nonprofit accounting, it's hard. It's a whole different structure than corporate accounting to look at these numbers, and I'm so used to like the budget, the pro forma, all these different terms. So Debbie was great in helping me that, so I didn't bug you. But your presentation gave me a couple of questions that I wanted to clarify. Actually, this sheet. So when we talk about projections for the 2 coming years, I know that our projection now includes the $450,000, whatever the break is and stirs. Are you factoring in the presumed decrease for the next 2 years too, or do you just take that presumption for the first year?
So these include a 1%. The STIRS rate is in law increasing by 1.85% in 1920, and then an additional amount in 2020-21. In the governor's proposal, I'm just for the rest of the group. I know that we've talked about the basics of this. We have included the. It's not a reduction. It's just a instead of 1.85% increase. It only includes a little less than a 1% increase for next year. And then that same 1% is included in 2020-21. In both years of the projection, it is included because that is the governor's proposal as of January. If that doesn't go through, there's about a $450,000 impact in both fiscal years. So about a $900,000 impact over 2 years.
Okay, that's
if
what
that doesn't go through.
Okay, that's what I was afraid of. I'm so used to you not banking on something until it's done. I understand that it's different when you're talking about schools. So this is like the best case scenario. If he changes his mind, then we rethink this, right?
Yeah, this does not include any downside risk of the governor not moving forward with that proposal.
Okay. Sorry, these aren't going to be in order, just how they wrote them. You mentioned that our enrollment declined.
Yes.
Did we understand why? I mean, that seems pretty significant, especially given the time of year that it was.
We go up and down actually throughout the year, each and every year that I've been here.
I know that some people move, but it just seemed like the way you present, it seemed like especially over the holidays and stuff. If January, I think you mentioned it went down. So anyway, did we ever follow up and find out why?
We have. We've done a detailed report of every in and out that we've looked at, and we've gone and checked. And primarily, it's been moves. People have moved outside the district. But like I said, we have seen that number come up very close again to our first week in October number. The reason I was noting it as an impact is sometimes we go up a little bit and then down. Sometimes we go down a little bit and up. But given that this year, if we continue to be in declining enrollment, will be the ADA that we are funded on next year, it's important that we went down and then up instead of up and then down.
Right. I actually kind of wondered, though, my thought process was it was going down. I was wondering if any of the impact of our marketing. So I was just forward thinking to well, maybe we're going back up because of our marketing efforts.
So we are seeing enrollment numbers coming in, but it's hard to right now to see they're higher than this time as in prior years. But we also started the process significantly earlier this year, so it's hard to tell at this point whether we just got those people in early now or that our marketing is doing. So I think we'll know a lot better those numbers in June and then obviously especially in August.
Okay. So just two more little things. The other thing that caught my attention is the mention of the cost to MCOE for special ed. Is that something? Is that is that a contractual rate that changes, or is it just because of the amount of use?
It's both.
Okay.
And so, and to be clear, it's a little bit of a hard system when we look at special education services in the county. But we belong to the Marin County SELPA, which includes all the school districts in Marin County. So all districts run their own programs. We run a significant number of programs at our schools, including resource classes, SDC classes, social cognition classes, CEC, counseling enriched classes. But we also the county runs programs through the SELPA, and the mechanism is our SELPA, which is the group of districts, contracts with the Marin County Office of Education to run classes. So each year they have similar budget pressures as we do, increasing PERS and STIRS costs, those kind of things, increasing costs, labor costs, and those kind of. What has changed over the last couple of years is that the County Office of Ed has been pushing, or the SELPA and the County Office of Ed have been moving and adding programs in an attempt to reduce the non-public school placements countywide. Marin County has one of the highest levels of non-public school placements in the state, and one of the items that the county SELPA is working along with MCOE is to lower that number, and they have added classes. Now, sometimes when you add classes, we know it takes a couple years to get those full and to see the impact of those. But so half of that impact is just the general increase or a little bit of that is the increase in costs, a couple $100,000, but about $500,000 of that cost is related to those new programs, as well as our placements within those programs. So it's a little complicated to get exactly which part of the cost, but it's really all three of those factors.
Okay, thank you. I just was trying to figure out if there's any piece that we can somehow control, but given that the change was so significant and unexpected, is that kind of thing that's going to push us just in the really wrong direction. So if there's anything controlled that we can do, but it doesn't sound like it. So,
one item, there will be some that has been reviewed as part of the school services special education review. So there likely will be some recommendations about our use of county programs in that report.
And then just a little one, because I still, we're looking for $41,000 last week. So I was looking at everything, and I noticed the increase in the water and sewer. It was $34,000, but when I looked at that, I'm like, well, that's almost this, So is there a reason all of a sudden that went up? Are we doing something different?
No, there was an increase in water rates.
So it's just rate based. It's not usage or something. Okay.
There's a little bit of usage. One of the other things is our basis is always we use current year as a basis for usage, and our May and June of last year, which wasn't included as our basis for our budget, wasn't included in there, and those were higher months of usage. So some of it is usage, but not really an increase in usage. It's just based on the baseline that we determine our budget on, didn't include those 2 months, which increased in the last year.
Sounds like we need to go to the county instead of the county coming to us. I don't think we're going to get out of it, though. Thank you for asking that question. No, that was, when you made the point of that number increasing from the MCOE, so.
One item, though, if I could just add one extra item, President Butler. Our positive certification is founded on the basis that the board will approve $1.8 million in reductions. So I do need to be clear that without those $1.8 million in reduction, it could potentially alter my recommendation of a positive certification on the second interim budget. Usually I would have put those first, but I thought it was important to do the basis around this before we went into the budget reductions.
Okay, we have some other questions, but we could hear both items and then go back and approve.
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay. Trustee Mack and then Trustee Cooper.
Thanks for putting this together, as always. I just want to reiterate Trustee Gasson's point about how let's make sure we focus on the top line as well as the absolute costs. Understood that costs are, we have to do something there, but let's also not ignore the top line. Just want to reiterate that. Question regarding Fund 17.
Yes.
Can you, this is a bit rhetorical, but if you could please just define for all of us what Fund 17 is intended for.
Fund 17 is a special reserve fund. On our consolidated financial statements, Fund 17 actually is consolidated in with our Fund 01 to be our general fund because it doesn't have a specific revenue stream that is attached to it. The revenue stream for Fund 17 is transfers from Fund 1. And so it's a special reserve fund. It was installed, I believe, in 2015-16 amongst
right.
the increase in PERS and STIRS as we were moving forward. It's about $3.1 million. I'll get into the impacts of the PERS and STIRS a little bit more in our budget solutions item. But by 2020-21, the projected impact of those increases is about $6 million annually. So it could be, that's only half of 1 year's impact of those funding. And also when we note our unrestricted fund balance as a percentage, we always include Fund 17 as part of that. And so that's when I was noting the 10.5% to 11% reserve at the end of this year unrestricted. That included the $3.1 million in Fund 17.
Got it. I just want to make sure it was the same one that I've always thought about. So,
absolutely.
To be honest, I thought we'd already kind of just cleaned it out to account for all the increases we've had recently. But in the end, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen the other, I suppose. Yeah, Fund 1 versus 17. Okay, got it. And then you mentioned that our reserves were getting down to about 11%. That sound about right?
Yeah, that's about
currently.
right.
And then generally getting out to the 2021, what percentage you think we'll be down to by then on current trend?
On the current trend, we'll be below 7%, 6%. We're starting to really reduce. We were at 22% as in about 2010, 11, and we've slowly declined since then. So that doesn't include, like Trustee Gasson said, that includes the small offset to the STRS rate increase over the next 2 years and a couple other factors.
Right.
So,
and I might be catching you flat-footed here. I apologize if that's the case. And if you don't have it, we can do it later. But
yeah.
Just curious to see if you have a sense for where we rank in the MCOE other districts in terms of reserves. You know, we're sitting now at 11, going down to 7 or 8. How would you characterize us relative to the other districts in the county?
So I don't have exact details. I know most of the districts are going to be higher or significantly higher, but I think it is important to note that every district needs to look at their reserves in their own, related to their own risks. But we are going to be low. We did just see at the end of 2017-18, we have statewide unrestricted for unified school districts, and it was in the 16 to 17% range for unified school districts. Elementary school districts are a little bit higher, and elementary schools are any district K-8 in the state. They have a little bit higher level, but a lot of that is because that's a lot of very small districts, and as a percent, usually very small districts keep a higher percentage reserve. But unified districts, which we usually compare to ourselves to as comparable districts, we're about 5% lower than those districts right now, on average.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Cooper and then Trustee Aguila.
Thanks, Yancy. My question was about Fund 17 also.
Yeah.
And I just didn't, so I kind of understand the timeline. We've been depositing $1 million for the last 3 years into that.
Yeah.
And as far, so you've been telling us the PERS costs, PERS STRS costs are going to be increasing up until about 2021?
Yep. STRS will be increasing through 2021. PERS is projected to still increase beyond that, but the PERS impact is not nearly what the STRS impact is.
Right, okay. And I just thought as a board, maybe, I mean, the purpose of Fund 17 is we put that money in there just for this situation we're in. And I just wonder if now's the time for us to look at spending some of that out of there, putting that back in the general fund or not, or is there any point of even doing that?
So the board directed me this fall and in April to bring back a fund balance policy by the end of this fiscal year, and I think that absolutely that should be part of the discussion overall. And I think there's, I'll be bringing some different options of different fund balance policies, based on recommendations from the Government Financial Service Officers Association, what countywide reserve policies that we have, as well as where some of our comparable districts sit in terms of their reserves. But I think all of that should be brought into a direct policy by this board, saying that either X percent or X level of, this dollar amount of reserve needs to be, and then we can put that reserve, every dollar is green, as some people say. We can put that reserve, whether it's in Fund 1 or Fund 17, but the district will have a firm policy on what's the lowest level that they are comfortable having. And then also one of the most important things about that is in what situations would they ever use that? And so a directive from this board and really to designate that reserve, if I'm just using accounting speak, which really says when do we put money in, and then when, if ever, can we take money out of that fund?
I mean, it's not a situation we obviously like to be in, but I think Trustee Gasson's suggestion or hope to increase revenues would be the solution that we all want. But anyway, thank you.
Okay, Trustee Aguila.
Yeah. So thank you so much for this information. It's just the hard times right now, and wondering about if we could just, a suggestion would be to, sometimes you give us best case scenarios, or sometimes you give us, this is not included, and after tonight, it's, it's already included. And I'm wondering if we can be a little more consistent as far as, like, if we could do both worst case scenario, best case scenarios, and if that's too much work, I'm more in favor of looking at the worst case scenarios, just from my perspective. I mean, I think and for the community, they would like to see that too. But it's just like to encourage us to be a little more consistent on that. So thank you.
All right, so I think, can we move on? Before we take action on this, I would like to move on to the budget assumptions, or not budget, the budget solutions, and then we'll go from there. So we're moving on to item 13D, proposed budget balancing solutions, before we take any action on the second interim.
One item that before I move on, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Nancy Walker and her team. As you know, you've seen the 250-page report and all the work that goes into it. We are very, very lucky to have the best in the business helping us out. So thank you, Nancy. As we move in to the next item, this is the 2019-20 NUSD budget balancing process and proposed recommendations. We're going to go over a quick financial input and look at what the negative pressures on our budget are. We're also going to look at the 2018-19 Budget Advisory Committee, because I think it's impossible to look at this year's work without looking at it in concert with the prior year work that we did, because a lot of the work we did this year was just an extension of that work last year. We'll talk briefly about the 2019-20 budget balancing process, and then we'll go over the updated list of proposed recommendations. One thing is, this is primarily similar to the presentation that we gave last year, but if there's anything else that any trustee wants to bring from the last, we have the other report ready to go as well, in case there are questions from last week as well. So declining enrollment continues to be a negative pressure on our budget. We lost 170 students from 2017-18 to 2018-19, and as we are funded 1 year in arrears, that's $1.7 million of one-time revenue that we're really sitting on this year related to that declining enrollment. So just to kind of a reminder, each student equals about $10,000 of recurring revenue a year through LCFF and a couple of other sources. So every 100 students that go out of the system, that's about $1 million of revenue that's lost out of the system. Our declining enrollment is really based on one factor, lower birth rates in Marin County. Starting in 2009, during the Great Recession, birth rates in Marin County dropped from 2,800 births a year to 2,300 a year. We have continued to see about the same percentage of those births 5 years later. And so 2,800 to 2,300 is basically, about 25% of that decrease is the decrease we're seeing every year. Our senior class is about a little over 600 students. Our kinder classes have been somewhere between 450 and 500 students over the last 6 years. We have birth rates for the last 4 years. So we know that this projection is very likely to continue for at least the next 4 to 5 years as the bubble moves out of our middle schools and high schools. And then the County of Marin actually just lowered their birth rate projections a little bit further, but that's more than 5 years out right now. I don't really want to talk about that, but I think it's pretty likely that we will decrease. It's also important to note that from year to year, our projections sometimes a little low, sometimes a little high. In 2017-18, we projected about 70 to 80 students out of the system, and we were only down about 10. This year, we projected about 120 students out of the system, and we are high at about 170 students. But I think if you look over the course of and let the law of averages work out, we're still declining at 1 to 2% a year in terms of enrollment, or about 100 kids a year. We've talked about the impact of state-mandated pension contribution increases. So back in using our current cost of employees, the 2013-14 expenditure for our STRS and PERS cost would be about $4.6 million. By 2020-21, it's projected to be $10.4 million, and that's when the STRS increase is fully implemented. That increase is implemented in law by the legislature. And then, as I noted to Trustee Cooper, the PERS rate still is projected to increase after that, but as you can note, as the purple bar is a much smaller portion, that increase is not going to be nearly as impactful as both increases together. The overall impact of that, $6 million annually, if you want to just take into consideration, that would be 60 additional teachers in the district, or every teacher and employee in the district an additional 10% raise in the district. So it's very impactful of what that is doing. About $1 million annually is the increase that we're seeing on top of the increases before. We noted our deficit spending and our ending fund balance. This is reflected of the unrestricted side of the budget. The unrestricted side of the budget is the only thing that can pay for all the things that a district may want to do. We've moved from 22% at the end of 2010-11 to 12% at the end of June 30th, 2018, and we're projected to move down to 11 or a little bit below that at the end of this year. In 2018, last year in 2017-18, we formed a budget advisory committee in order to make about $2 million in budget reductions for 2018-19. It had a little over 25 members, including parents, teachers, classified staff, administrators, and students. We had 5 months of meeting, and with that, we came up with about $2.2 million of reduction, about $700,000 of those directly related to our declining enrollment using our current staffing formulas. The additional $1.5 million were programmatic reductions. Of that, about 32% came straight from the declining enrollment with no change in staffing formula, and an additional 44% came from administrative and district office cuts, with the roughly 25% coming from other areas. In 2018-19, for 2019-20, in the fall and winter, the district has gone through a budget balancing process. We worked with the basis of the Budget Advisory Committee's work as our basis in terms of the potential budget solutions, in terms of some of the tiered work that they did of potential solutions. And then we also went out to our community and received about 1,500 survey responses from parents, teachers, classified students, and administrators. And we also reviewed those results with the individual stakeholder groups. We then came forward on March 12th with a draft list of recommendations. The board directed staff to make a few small changes to that, and we have the final list of proposed budget balancing solutions. I'm just going to go through them very quickly. These are primarily the same group as last time, with a couple of changes. The board directed staff to remove the 0.4 FTE reduction to the athletic directors at each of the comprehensive high schools. In that place, we increased district office departmental budgets by an additional cut of $5,000. The Board of Trustees agreed to make a $12,500 reduction to their budget. And then, trying to leave no stone unturned, we will start charging an indirect cost to our developer fees fund, which we haven't done in the past, but we have we've talked with our auditors, and they agreed that we can do that. To be clear, that isn't the entire $41,000, but on 1 week's notice, that was basically the the best that we could do without having any additional positions in there. One other thing that I do want to make clear is that we've started working through how we would implement these. And one of the items we have come to a stumbling block because the savings that we had projected doesn't match some of the work and the proposals that we did. And that is the reduction in the BITSA program charge. Last week, we told you that we were moving towards what a majority of the school districts in Marin County were doing, and that is true. A majority of the districts in Marin County do not pay the program charge for the BITSA program, but they do pay a part of the MCOE cost of that. So our recommendation will be, and this was just earlier today, so I wanted to give you the most up-to-date information, that we will, our proposal is still to make that reduction to match up with the majority of the Marin school districts of that program fee as we move forward, but to cover the portion that those other districts do. In order to try to backfill that, we've got the C&I team looking through all potential grants, including our Title II federal money, potentially to cover the remaining cost of that. So we still believe that we can get a majority of that cost, but we noted last week, that our goal was to be more in line with the other districts in Marin. And so with that, we wanted to bring that to the board. But we still believe we can, through moving those costs into Title II and some other grants, we can get a majority of that cost savings. So I did want to note that. With that, I open it up to questions.
All right. Questions? Trustee Millerick?
So it's simple. Thank you very much. This is clear. I think this is the conversation we had last week. You've got you have savings of $1.8 million. My hope is during the course of the year, we're still upside down $1 million. My hope is that you look for another 10% of this, or another $180,000 that you can pick up when you discover during the course of the year some of these things aren't panning out just like you thought. There's some variation. You give yourself a buffer and start looking to do better than this by 10% than the numbers you quoted, so we can stay within our objective that we set. Because like you just pointed out, a week later, there's a surprise, and it isn't just exactly the way you imagined. And some will go in your way, and some will go against you. So, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move to, we have 3 blue cards, so I'm going to move to that. I have Mark Miller, Josh Chasman, and Casimir Adler Ivanbrook. So those 3 speakers. And just a reminder, you have 3 minutes. Please come up to the podium. Hi, Mark.
Hi, gang. Mark Miller, custodian from hell and from San Marin for going on 21 years now. That's awesome. I'm here to address, and I'm looking for some of that 17 money.
Yeah.
You're going to get it. I'm painfully aware that the cuts in the budget you must act on tonight will, when implemented, even though through attrition, will no doubt have a noticeable effect on how your support staff is able to fulfill the needs and desires for excellence in our schools. I'd like to save you and the district some time, though, regarding the planned cuts in the custodial column. Don't do it. With all positions filled, we still operate at the bare minimum. I say this not out of self-interest as a custodian, but as someone who has experience in this failed experiment. This will be the 3rd iteration of a new administration dusting off a CASBO report that has no bearing in reality, and using it as a template to bolster an idea that based on square footage and student population, the NUSD is overstaffed at some of our elementary schools. Nothing could be further from the truth. You may recall the last time we went through this, but you may not be aware that within about a month, Not only were all the positions restored, but one more was hired for San Marin. It became quickly evident to the stakeholders at the schools affected that the lack of cleaning and security was unsanitary, unsafe, and unacceptable. The night custodial positions are essential to the maintenance of our schools. The only tenable way to eliminate these positions is to actually close a school if that becomes a reality. I'm not advocating for that, but there are too many unanswered questions surrounding the district's plan and the gyrations needed to enact it, only to have it fail under the hue and cry of those affected. Like the old saying, if we don't remember our history, we're doomed to repeat it. And I just hope that, like the New Yorker cartoon, I'm not the master talking to the dogs and all they hear is blah, 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 blah. Thank you for your time and your open minds.
Josh?
Nancy said I could just back, so I can refer to that. Thanks. My name is Josh Chasman. I'm a concerned parent of a San Marin student who has gone through the public school system right from the beginning and have a freshman in college who did the same, San Ramon, Sinaloa, San Marin. Just as a general comment first, and thank you for your time, it seems to me like most of the items being suggested here are direct-to-student services, and that's sad to me. Anything relating to student safety, drug and suicide prevention, and the like really shouldn't be on the list. Additionally, reducing classroom aides, custodial staff, and the like is just going to add burden to the teachers as the work all still needs to get done, and they're going to be the ones left to do it. But the main point of my couple of minutes is a survey was sent out. As you guys stated, roughly 1,500 people completed it in one of the 5 stakeholder groups, and the results are posted on the NUSD website, but I would say kind of. There are a dozen pages of the 6 categories in this tiny print with a total of almost 300 rows of data and no cumulative results. I have to believe that NUSD in its diligence compiled those results and did an overall weighted average, not just a weighted average within each category, because that's all that's been shared with us. So assuming that's been done, I think we need that data, and the board needs that data before they can vote. It's significant data, it's transparency, and without it, this doesn't really mean anything. We're looking at about 15 items that were on the survey on this slide right here. We don't actually know if those items correlate at all to what the survey results are. We don't know what the top 15 items in the survey are on an overall cumulative basis. These could be the bottom 15, and we don't know because we don't have the cumulative results, right? I did the math on 3 of them. I just randomly chose a few that looked high and low. The increased rent to Novato Television looks like a high score with a cumulative average of almost 3.25. This is on the list. Reducing the school site discretionary budget is about 2.3. That looks like a really low cumulative score. So does the reduction of the private security. That's about 2.4. Those are my quick averages, but I can't spend the time going through 300 rows. So I have to believe that it was done. From my perspective, without the cumulative data, we don't know half the picture. We ought to be able to see the list of suggested items and side by side with it, the list of the survey results and where these items stand in that survey result so that we can see whether it's the top 15, the bottom 15, what the community actually requested or not. I understand that it may not be identical. These may not be the top 15, but if they're not, if they're the bottom 15, there should be some explanation to us as to why things that the survey told us were the most important from all of these groups are at the bottom. Frankly, I strongly believe that the board should not vote on this tonight. I believe that the community and the board should see that data. And if they do vote, you're not providing the necessary oversight and don't know whether you're representing the community or just the district office agenda. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, our last speaker.
Thank you very much to the board and superintendent for their efforts in these difficult times. My name is Cass Adler Ivanbrook. I'm a teacher at Novato High School. My main claim tonight is that the budget cut proposal document that we have up and the one for 2018-19 may make sense from an accounting perspective, but they are deeply problematic from an economist's standpoint. First, economics recognizes that resources are scarce and that choices need to be made to allocate these scarce resources. These choices involve trade-offs. We choose among trade-offs, rationally picking the better of two goods, the lesser of two bads, and we ask, will the benefit of this choice be worth the cost of giving something else up that we also value? The document that was presented last week with the choices for 2018-19 and 2019-20 did not set up this issue this way. It did not correctly form the choices so that the board could choose rationally among alternatives, given the board's claim that education and teacher retention are top priorities, and also the district's desire in conformity with 3 of 5 values that it holds, namely equity, caring, and inclusion. Correctly setting out choices, benefits, and costs would have used as its starting point the allocation of resources prior to the finalization of the teacher certificated classified contracts. These choices would have started with scenarios of what paying all staff a true Bay Area caller would have looked like, which means leaving purchasing power intact. If that had been the place where conversation started, the 2018-19 budget cost-cutting document would have started off needing savings not of $2.3 million, but closer to $4 million. So when the district bargains in negotiations and the district asks its staff to accept a 2% cut in real wages for the good of the team, that loss should be acknowledged by the district for what it is, a sacrifice and a component of the budget cost-cutting measures that it presents to the board to approve. On top of this, beginning teachers bear not only this cut in real wages, but add additional costs of now paying bits of fees, lowering their real wage even more. They are sacrificing a lot, and I want to publicize this additional sacrifice. How are these sacrifices of all these folks, and especially new teachers, in line with the stated values of NUSD and the position of this board to protect and nurture teachers, new and old? When Superintendent Hoggaboom tells us last week that the communications director is a vital part of the administrative team and that scrapping the position would intolerably increase workloads on the administrators, the question I ask are these. Superintendent Hoggaboom and members of the board, why are the benefits of this position more valuable and in tune with NUSD's and this board's stated needs and values than trying to ensure that new and inexperienced teachers can actually afford to live in the district or anywhere within 50 to 100 miles of here? Or that this position is worth the sacrifice in real wages asked for and is ceded to by all teaching certificated and classified folks? Why is this the best use of our resources? I would really appreciate hearing the answers to these questions. Unfortunately, we did not get the guidance from the superintendent or the cost-cutting document we should have been considering last week. It is my hope that this will change and we will get these answers at some point in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you going to speak to this, George? No. A different item? Okay. This one. All right, I'll bring this back to the board. Trustee Mack and then Trustee Miller, did you want to? Okay.
I'll just like to make a quick comment about the review process. I believe everybody knows that we did compile all the survey results into one overall composite result. So we do have that. And in fact, then I did an audit of it myself and compared it to these line items. And I was able to effectively tie each one of these to one of those items. So generally speaking, they are all in the 2.5 or higher range, if you will. So I feel pretty comfortable that these are all tie into what we saw from the survey results. Did pretty exhaustive analysis of it myself, and through that composite set of survey results, it really helped. So we do have that.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Millerick?
To put this in context, this $1.8 million is the beginning of where we have to go. We did some last year, we do this. There's opportunities for conversations below this, but this is just the cream off the top of the milk. This is the easy work that we have to do. The hard work is still ahead of us. So I'm fine with this. We need to be moving. I would love, like I said, add another 10% to this to give yourself some margin of safety, because some of them aren't going to pan out just like you thought. Mark Miller's comments, I sat through this twice in a row. Part of what you said is true. 3. So, but I'm ready to vote in favor of this. We need to get moving in this direction. We have another $1 million to find.
All right, anybody? Trustee Gasson?
Just a brief statement, just in context of this. I think the biggest thing that we can do, because I'm not happy sitting here and seeing, the things we have to cut, and I'm like looking at every single little thing. But I think the important thing is that if we want to be heard, right, Senator McGuire, contact Levine, whoever always goes wrong. That's where we have to go. It has to come from the state. They're starting to hear it. They're listening. You've got teachers that are striking. You've got schools that are closing. My niece goes to school in Windsor. Their school's closing. They barely had any notification of that. I mean, these are not fun decisions, and we have to go and appeal and have our personal stories heard there. They are listening. They recognize that there's an issue because it's not just us. It's a lot of schools in California. So that's a way to, if we want to make change, that's a place to start.
Yeah, agree completely. I know this board will continue to advocate to improve the funding system as much as we can. We always have been. We've been through this before. It's not what we like to do. This is the worst part of our job. We take our fiscal responsibility seriously, and we want to make sure we maintain a positive budget, and that's what we're trying to do. We don't want the state to be taking us over, as Trustee Miller has spoke to several times. That's the last thing we want. And we're happy that MCOE did not show up this evening. So, yes.
So when you look at, then this is to my associates, when you look at the way Nevada Unified School District is funded, we get money from the state based on students. And when I got on this board, that was all the money we got. That was it. Since that time, this community and the hard work of Mark Miller and 800 people like him, we have convinced the community that the quality of education and the lives of our students in this town matter. And they support this district with a parcel tax. So we have the state money, and we have the community stepping forward with a parcel tax. In addition, for the second time, this board has put on the ballot a measure for physical plant construction, and some of that money was assigned to resources that could be called capital that helped offload the operating budget. So we have a third source of additional revenue that this board has put together and this community supports. And we're still paying both bonds off. We haven't finished the first, and we're running a second. In fact, we are currently at $20 per 100,000, which is the maximum amount of money that we, even with bond authorization, we can't cash those bonds in to move us forward. So unlike where we were before, where we had physical plant that was condemned, we've been able to resolve that, and we've built some nice facilities. But we now have three sources, and we're at the cap. The bond money that helps us, the parcel tax money that helps us, the state money that helps us, and we have some rental incomes because we are the city park and rec department for the grounds and fields. So we have done a good job of trying to find extra revenue and asking the community to support us. If that community support dissipates, those other sources will dissipate as well. So it isn't like we haven't, as a district, all of us together, looked for alternative income, but we have to keep our house in order. And so this is the step we have to take tonight. We have other big steps to take, and we're at our bonding limit. We can't go out and find, I mean, we have to live within our means. And now it's time for us to do our job and live within our means. So yes, I think additional revenue is good, but we got.
Yes.
So, because my mom and I talk about this a lot. So 25. Well, no.
Talk at night when you're not.
Yeah, no. Because about when they changed. And actually, maybe Yancy knows. When did they change that? It depended that unexcused absence or excused absences were not counted anymore.
Nancy knows.
Because to me, that's a huge funding element.
It was later than that. It was in the late 90s.
Oh, was that long ago?
And so it's at least 20 years ago, if not longer. But the one thing I will note is the state will remind us that they increased the statewide rate is about 96%. And so they increased that when they moved us to ADA funding without the excused absences. It was like a 4% that they added, 4.1% that they added to the calculation. So it supposedly was normalizing that rate for us. But it's a huge expense for us to be going through and looking at it purely on an attendance basis. It's a huge expense for the district and time for the staff. But
Meetings, you said it took up time versus being benefit for the difference or whatever.
that was the argument at the.
Okay. Actually, I remember you telling me that now. Okay. I don't know. I still get it in my head that, it seems ridiculous that, because the kid is sick with a legitimate reason that you don't get funded for them. The costs are same whether they're there or not. So, I knew that it had changed.
It made perfect sense in districts where there was a 30% absentee every day. And there were districts in the state where that was happening, and so they weren't funded on what they claimed who they were teaching, but they were teaching 60% of the kids in the town. That's why the state made the move. We're just the tail of the dog in that whole equation.
Okay. I also want to remind staff that part of the conversation last week was the school size committee revisiting that and moving on that a little bit sooner than maybe even before September, October. What is the best timeline for staff to kick that into gear and get going on that?
So I think reviewing timeline and moving forward with plans,
Coming back
we can
to the
start.
board.
We can come back, but I don't think until we have the enrollment numbers for next year that we can go full speed. But that doesn't mean that we can't be
Some of the
revved up
back
and
work a
working
little
on
bit.
the engine and doing everything in case that we're hopeful that some of our things that we're doing will significantly increase our enrollment for next year.
Right.
But there is a high likelihood that even with that, we'll have to look at other options. And I think with the survey results coming back from the community, that I think they said that we need to seriously look at it. I don't think they said we have to do it, but I think they said we better be looking at it. And even the committee noted that, even though they felt that there were some potential, that there were negative impacts, they also realized that there were inefficiencies in how we were running our schools at the size we were, and that we weren't maximizing the use of our property. So even in their recommendation, I
Right.
think there was a split on the 4 criteria that we were looking at.
Okay. And I think looking up the makeup of that group as well to
Yeah.
make sure everybody's represented on that group. Trustee Aguila.
I just have a question about process. Is there somewhere in that the community can see, they gave us back their thoughts, and as we did the top 15, lower 15. Is there an update so people are all up to date on what you guys did? So this is what you guys said, this is what we came up with, or just a little bit a better explanation for the community?
Yeah, I think that we did put all of the data on there, but I absolutely understand the community member who commented that could be very difficult to go through, especially because it was, and I realized it was in PDF format on there. So I think we could put out some additional information that has to make it clear. So to be clear, all the data was out there, but I agree, it would have taken a lot of time. There could have been ways that we could have done it in a summary way as well. So we can put out some of that.
And I'll be happy
Great.
to help there because I already got a
Great.
spreadsheet that already summarized it into one composite.
Yeah.
And already took a first stab at basically assigning every one of these to one of those rows.
Okay.
Obviously, you guys know better than me, so you can use it as a starting point.
And just make sure that it's user-friendly.
Yeah, I think that we could have done a better job making at least that data user-friendly. So I think that was a good comment.
All right, so what I would like to do is take action on this, on our budget balancing solutions, and then move over to the second interim. So. Okay, so. 13B, this is approval. I have a first by trustee Mack, a second by trustee Millerick. This is, so it's worded properly, recommending this is approval of the 2019-2020 proposed budget balancing solutions totaling $1.8 million. Okay. So just again, a first by trustee Mack, a second by trustee Millerick. All those in favor? 7-0. Okay.
Before we move on, if I could say a couple things.
Yes.
It's important to note that there are people's lives affected by these decisions
Absolutely.
that we just made. There are longstanding employees who have given their heart and soul to this district, and it deserves to be acknowledged that we're making this decision that's going to affect them. We'll be working closely with our partners to make sure we do all we can to minimize the effects on them. But I just want to acknowledge that there are hardworking employees that are affected by these decisions that have given lots of years to us. And so, you know, I just want to be thoughtful about
Yeah,
that.
no, appreciate that. Thank you. All right, moving back to item 13A. This is the staff's recommending approval of the 2018-19 second interim budget report with a positive certification. Okay, so the first by trustee Nell. A second by trustee Cooper. All those in favor? 7-0. Okay. And I just want to thank Yancy and staff for this process that we've had to go through. Again, not the process we want to be in, not where we want to be right now, but thank you for all the work that you did to get us to this point. Thank you. Okay, I would like to move on to the next item, and then I would like to potentially move to the MBI staff report. But first I want to do the board acceptance of Measure G Bond Independent Citizens Oversight Committee. When we have our committee chair here, along with Mike Willard. God, I almost said Mark. No,
Mark might
but we
have
have Eric Messenberg here. Hi.
Well, good evening, trustees. Tonight we'd like to present or seeking board acceptance of the Measure G Bond Independent Citizens Oversight Committee Annual Report for the year 2017-18. Before I introduce our committee chair, I'd like to also welcome Ms. Sylvia Berry, one of the committee members, and Mr. Jeffrey Valiant here
Thanks for
tonight
being
to help
here,
support.
Sylvia. Thank you.
And I thought who better to tell you what the committee did and how well it was than the chair, committee chair himself. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Eric Messenberg while I try to get this up online.
Fair enough. Good evening, trustees. So Eric Messenberg, I'm a PTA member in actually 3 of your schools here at the school district, Olive, Sinaloa, and San Marin. And so as your 2018-2019 chair of the NUSD Measure G Independent Citizens Oversight Committee, it is my pleasure on behalf of the entire committee to present our second annual report of the Measure G Great Schools for a Greater Novato Bond Program, covering the reporting period July 1st, 2017 through June 30th of 2018. And you, of course, know this, but for some of the folks in the audience, our committee's primary responsibility is to review and report on the expenditure of taxpayer money, ensuring that bond revenues are expended only for the purposes set forth in Measure G. This mandate has been fulfilled to date by holding quarterly review meetings, participating in a summer 2018 site walk to view ongoing construction projects, and reviewing Measure G expenditures and audits in order to make sure that taxpayer monies are spent where required. So our committee has reviewed the financial and performance audit for the period ending June 30th, 2018, issued by our independent auditing firm, Christie White Associates. The firm conducted its audit in compliance with the generally accepted government auditing standards. Christie White Associates issued an unmodified opinion, which in auditor speak is very good, and that the financial statements, quote, present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the Measure G Bond Building Fund of Novato Unified School District as of June 30th, 2018. So that's a great thing. Based on this audit and the other work that has been done by our committee, we would like to announce that the Novato Unified School District was in compliance with all requirements of Prop 39 and Measure G for the period ending June 30th, 2018. Full report, of course, is available on the district's website. And additionally, I'm happy to also announce that your staff has been very helpful, very open, very accommodating and transparent, and have been a pleasure to work with. Of course, the work of the committee is conducted under the Brown Act. All of our meetings are open to the public. We welcome observers and comments, and you know where to find us. Just go to the website. Mike?
Nicely done. Thank you.
Talks fast. I'd like you to do the next couple reports.
Yeah.
If you don't mind. No, with that, we'd just seeking board acceptance of the committee's annual report. And before you do that, I would like to kind of give a shout out to Melissa Duggan, who is our bond coordinator, who did an absolutely, she did a lot of work for that.
Amazing.
And she should be in publishing.
Yeah.
But we're
Really
really glad to
nice.
have her, so wanted to give her the props. So with that, we are seeking board acceptance of the annual report.
How will this get distributed to either to the sites where there's a couple copies and people?
Very similar to last
How do we
year.
get to the community to be able to look at this?
We will do physical distribution at all the school sites,
Okay.
and we'll do the library, the Margaret Todd Center. I think we did the post office and a few other public places as well to get it out there.
Great. And we already did our mailer, which is the combo parcel tax
Correct.
bond, which was already has gone out.
And we have, actually, I should say Melissa's doing a great job at this too, continually adding to our website presence as well.
Nice. Great.
President Butler?
Yes, Trustee Cooper.
Yeah, I just want to say I sit on this committee, or I don't sit on the committee, I attend the committee meetings, and I'm sure I would have been corrected by one or two of the board committee members, but I wanted to just commend you all with, starting with Eric's leadership and the other two, Sylvia and Jeff. I think you've done a great job. I think you've done an awesome job for representing to the community of Novato that we've done a good job expending our money and using it frugally and wisely. So thank you very much. Done a great job.
Yep. Trustee Gila?
Yeah, I just, I'm very, very proud of the fact that this has been done and the process and the transparency that has happened. Just want to remind us the community is watching, and they are asking questions, and they're challenging us, and I think that this is I just love the transparency and proud to see the big white signs and all the hard work that has been put in it. And so I just wanted to say thank you, and I'll make a motion if it hasn't been made.
Yep, go ahead. So we have a first by Trustee Aguila and a second by Trustee Nell. This is approval of the board acceptance of the 2017-18 annual report from the Measure G Bond Independent Citizens Oversight Committee. And this audit, this was a rather short audit, but it'll get much more lengthy as we move through spending the funds. So, yeah.
One more question.
Yes.
Oh, and so also the Latino community, I know that we translating it and making sure that at least if it's not translated, can we have, what's a way for the Latino community to be able to get answers if they have any questions?
We're currently working on that due to budget constraints to translate this entire document. If you'll notice, it's 3 times longer than it was last year. Gets to be a little cost prohibitive, but we're working to put some more stuff on the website that kind of summarizes certain sections. Like, for instance, the chair's letter, we'll try to translate and get out there. So we're doing everything we can to make sure the message gets out to the
I'll be
community.
happy to help.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for asking that. So again, a first by Trustee Gila, a second by Trustee Nell. All those in favor? 7-0. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, board members, I would like to move over to the staff reports. I know we still have a couple discussion actions, but we can actually hold on those to do the MBI report. We have some audience members, and I have some blue cards. Again, if you want to speak before any items still left on the agenda, fill out a blue card, and we will put you into where you're supposed to speak. You have 3 minutes to come up to the podium and speak, but first, we will get the presentation, and I have, oh, you're starting off, sorry. Superintendent Hogaboom will be starting the presentation, along with Mark Brewer.
Thank you, President Butler. So tonight, with the North Bay Initiative update, we're going to kind of cover 4 categories. Why did we establish the program? why was it canceled, what are we doing to support the students, and then maybe most importantly, what lessons have we learned about starting an innovative program. So I think it's clear to say that the excitement around the, it was originally called No Bells Initiative because it was going to be an integrated program with students working together, subsequently changed the name to North Bay Initiative. A lot of excitement around it. Glenn Corey had come to us from the private sector, really creative, innovative teacher. He met Rob Lippincott, who had a lot of contacts with our business community, and Matt Baldwin, who I think had gone to a lot of model schools, conferences, so had seen a lot of different ideas. So they really had an idea that we all were in favor of, which was personalized education, meet students where they were, their needs, kind of adjust our system to students' needs as opposed to making students adjust to our needs, providing eventually, hopefully, mentoring and support where every student would get a mentor from the business community to help them out. Again, kind of individualized learning where a lot of the learning would be on the Summit Learning platform. Teachers kind of like project-based learning things where you would call students together kind of in seminars as you needed them. Those students that are doing great can move ahead. Those students who needed help, you would do that. So, they also took some time to visit a lot of programs. I have a little bit of timeline down there. They did these things called design charrettes, which are where you have kind of like brainstorming ideas about how you're going to set up the program. So it started actually a little bit before June of 2016. Again, they kind of made that initial presentation to the board in June of 2016. They did a lot of visits to other programs. They actually went to some in New York City, Seattle, San Diego, San Francisco, kind of see what programs are working and what weren't. But again, a lot of enthusiasm about the program because I think a lot of us believe that kind of the rigid, comprehensive high school system that we have isn't effective with everybody. It works with some students, but not with all. And I know the board was really excited about it as well. The board gave us final approval, I think, in the spring of 2017, and we rolled out the program in the fall of 2017 to programs and students. It was there for that. A lot of excitement and enthusiasm about the program. It was apparent fairly soon on in terms of why the program was canceled. Scheduling was always a big issue. I think that I put it there, it was changed several times. I was told, I guess that it was changed 12 to 15 times, just trying to make sure that they worked the schedule out. Michelle Sanner, who was in the program initially, worked a lot on the scheduling. The Summit Learning platform was problematic a little bit from the beginning, partially because not all the teachers were able to attend all the trainings. So the other scheduling were initially we weren't going to allow students in the MSA program to attend. I think Principal Baldwin wanted to make sure we had our numbers up, so then we did allow students in MSA. So allowing students to have that 2-period block in MSA as well as be in MBI was really hard to make that work. So we kind of knew there were problems this summer even, and Christy Stalker was the assistant principal kind of assigned to look at the master scheduling after Matt left the summer. She called Amy and I during the summer and said, hey, I'm really having a difficult time making this schedule work. Can you guys come over here? So we did, and we really looked at the schedule and said, hey, can we make this work? We did realize also that the students needed an elective personalized learning time that they didn't have, just so they could meet with the teachers, get that more individualized feedback. That was one thing that we should have built in from the beginning. And the second was that teachers needed more collaboration time with each other. They didn't have a common prep period. So we looked into the schedule, tried to give some support with that, and actually, frankly, thought about maybe pulling the plug on it this summer. The numbers were down, the trying to make it work for everybody in MSA, and we did make kind of the executive decision this summer not to allow students in MSA to be in MBI because it was just making it too difficult for the program to work. So we still had high hopes and said, okay, let's. There's a smaller number. There's more like 30 students this year. Let's go forward with it. It's again, we still believed in the principles of it, but I would say that. Kind of going back to the 4 reasons, the biggest problem, I think, was not enough planning and development time at the start. When I think back at our developing the dual immersion program that we have at Linwood, I think we took 3 years on that. And some of that is my sense of urgency to get going. I do have a belief that we're not meeting the needs of too many of our kids. Maybe a third, 30 to 40% of our kids are fine. But I think there's too many of our kids who are falling through the cracks. So in my urgency and sense of commitment to kind of make a change in the system, I think we went too fast. And we should have, and I should have asked some harder questions in the beginning. Again, using dual immersion is probably the only other innovative program that we started. And I was ready to get on that too. And we said, let's slow down, let's make sure we do it right. And that was 3 years of planning, which in hindsight, I would say that's probably my key learning. Not only does it take time to plan the curriculum, because yeah, you're using the Summit Learning curriculum, but the teachers needed time they have to adapt that. There's no curriculum you can just take. It's a canned curriculum without doing that. So and the other thing is planning time more for the future. So yeah, we had a lot of year one planned, but we hadn't really thought through all the implications of the planning that we needed to do in years 2, 3, and 4. If we had continued with 90 students, 90, 90, 90, that would have been 360 students. How would that have affected the whole impact of the schedule? So we really just didn't take the time to think all that through, and should have had at least 2 years, if not 3 years, I think, before we started. That would have helped a lot. Second thing I already mentioned is scheduling problems, so I won't go over that again. That was a key constraint on the program. The third one was supporting all students. Because of the MBI use that Summit Learning platform, which is a great program, the teachers found that the Summit Learning was actually above where a lot of students were in terms of rigor. So a lot of students were, you have to pass a certain number, it was either I think 8, 9, or 10 when you're doing a lot of the quizzes to move on from there, and you could set that depending on different goals. A lot of students were finding that very, very difficult to do that. And again, because all the teachers weren't trained on the Summit Learning platform, they didn't understand how to use all that. So I think a lot of the students who were maybe falling through the cracks didn't know they were. I don't know if the parents knew they were not falling through the cracks or not. But as a result of that, I mean, I'll just go through some of the numbers, but the numbers of students receiving a D or an F grade during the first 3 semesters is way higher for MBI students than for the rest of the population. So that translates into 21 of 46 sophomores have at least 1 or more Ds, and Fs, which is about 47% of the current freshmen. That's obviously totally unacceptable for us. And then in terms of the freshmen, 8 freshmen out of 31, which is 26%, also have at least 1, if not more, Ds and Fs. So grades are certainly not the only criteria to measure success of the program, but it's kind of a basic level. And if we have that many students that are failing, then we're not doing them a service if we're not going to make sure that they can graduate and meet our goal of meeting the A to G requirements. Again, we did have that elective support, which is try to give kids more feedback, and I think that's helped. But teachers still struggle to communicate to all the students and their parents the progress that they were or weren't making towards proficiency in each of their content area classes. So that was a big, big factor. The last one is the Summit Learning Management System itself. I think that first summer we had teachers were supposed to go for a week. They went for 3 or 4 days. There was also a 2-3 day conference training during the school year. We can't make teachers attend the trainings. It's just not the way that it works. I mean, teachers who are in this program, we have probably some of the best teachers in the school there. Mike, Katie, Danny, Glenn are just amazing people. And I think if I had kids, I'd want my kids in their class because they're awesome. It takes a really heavy toll on teachers. A lot of innovative programs are dependent on the right teacher. Who's willing to get there, like Glenn Corey, who gets there at like 5 o'clock in the morning and leaves at 5 o'clock at night, if not later. So again, we can't make those teachers attend 3-day conferences. We can't make them go during the summer. But if they didn't have that basic training in Summit Learning, not all the teachers even use the Summit Learning platform, which I wasn't as aware of as I should have been. So that made it difficult to use that system. And I would also say I did sit in on some of the trainings that we received with Summit Learning. It was okay. I don't think their coaches were as helpful as they could have been to our teachers as they tried to learn how that system worked. So those are kind of the 4 key reasons why we decided to cancel the program. I'm going to have Mark Brewer come up, and one of our key things, and one of the reasons we decided to cancel the program early was to give people time to make the adjustment. We didn't want to wait till May and then pull the plug at the last minute when people didn't know. So we wanted to make sure that we're supporting students not only in adapting back next year, but more importantly, I would say, to make sure that those students who did have failing grades of D's and F's, that we're somehow being able to help them to raise those grades up. So Mark's going to talk a little bit about how we're supporting students to do that.
Thank you. So right now, currently, the teachers are using personal learning time, which is a great time to access students to help some of the students who failed classes last year or currently this first semester. One of the nice features is they can go back in and only work on retrieving the modules they did not reach proficiency in, so they don't have to go back and make up a whole year of the course. They make up pieces of the course to bring them to proficiency. Teachers are now going to offer some Saturday academies, which we already run at Novato High School. They'll invite the students in on Saturdays. It gives them a 4-hour block of time to devote to working with students to help them get up to speed and caught up on their current classes. And as they reach proficiency, they progress. Teachers can go back and make grade changes so that we can bring those grades back up to the level they need to be so that students are successful moving forward. And they're also back on track for graduation and meeting A-to-G requirements and things like that. So the teachers are doing a really good job right now of formalizing a process to make sure those kids don't fall through the cracks and giving them ample opportunities to engage so that they can make up the past credit.
Can you talk about the counseling? Is there a counselor
Yeah,
that's
and Anna
designated?
McGee, that is the counselor that's working with them. She's currently working with students going through the registration process and helping them select classes for next year. We've had some students go back to MSA, which we welcome them back because they had selected not to be an MSA, so they came forward almost right away and said, hey, we'd like to go back in MSA, so we facilitated that. Mark Sims has been very gracious and worked with me on some students who originally applied to STEM over there, and he's taken them back. They're going to join San Marin and join back in the STEM program, which was another option they had an interest in when they first joined. So Anna's working with students, and we continue to do that to find the right placement for them moving forward to next year. A lot of them will have the same teachers next year. Those teachers are still on our staff. They'll still be teaching for us. So students will be in their classes again, and which is great. They're great, caring teachers, but Novato High School has a full set of great, caring teachers that work with kids every day. So we just want to make sure these kids transition back into an environment that they feel good about, and Anna will continue to support them as we move into next year.
Have you been able to reach out to the students yourself? Or?
Yes,
Yeah.
I visit classrooms, talk with students. I've also met several times. There's a student advisory group that I've personally just met with and gotten some feedback and helped them. And I've also met with some individual students that have come in and said, hey, I need some help. I'm thinking about this program. Can you talk to that school? Like I helped get the student back into San Marin, starting as a sophomore, which they usually don't take, but Mark Sims was very gracious and worked with me on that. So I was able to get that placement done. And then I continue as students come in or have issues, I'll meet with them and help them out. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so questions from the board, and then I have some blue cards. Trustee Millerick and then Trustee Nell.
It's a technique.
Yes, sorry, hold on. I thought you were done, I apologize.
That's okay, cut me off, that's all right. I think the last one, again, is lessons learned, right? Because we don't like experimenting with kids. I do apologize to parents and the students because they started it. For some of the kids, it's working just like we wanted it to, right? It's personalized. Some kids had finished 2 or 3 years worth of the curriculum before they started. And so we don't want to start new programs and then have them not succeed. So, again, the key goals of the program were personalization, student agency, having kids take responsibility for their own learning, having relevant and meaningful work, connections to mentors, building a true sense of community. And Mark and I have talked about a lot of those things because that's what we're trying to build with all of our students. And hopefully, some of you guys are going to come visit Lindsay when we do that visit in April. But they don't have the Summit Learning Program, but they have Empower, which is a learning management system, but they don't give D's or F's. They either get an A, B, C, or an in progress, and I think that kind of a competency-based system is why we're trying to move to that. So there are about 5 or 6 key lessons learned. The first one, as I said, is planning time. I think before we try this again, we need at least 2 or 3 years to make sure we've thought through all the bugs in the system, planning time, as well as curriculum planning time, and both of those are really important. Along that is training time. In this case, it was really with the Summit Learning Platform, and our teachers were not as well prepared as they should have been. So again, as a result, not all the teachers used the program. Third was administrative support. Support for the teachers could have been stronger, both from the Novato High School administration as well as from me and our staff here. We also did have support at the site change. Jen Nickel, left. Matt Baldwin left. Christy Stalker left. So that wasn't really helpful. And then, at the district, we have a kind of a tight, loose thing, right? We don't want to impede what schools are trying to do. We try to, just like you guys, we set common goals for our schools, and then we try to let them achieve those goals in their own way. But we should have provided better support. We had some changes up here in curriculum. Initially, especially in the first semester, I sat in a lot of the trainings that were going on, and then I stopped doing that. I should have kept doing that so I knew what was going on. I mean, I checked in with Matt pretty often, but I needed to do a better job of checking in with the teachers and seeing how it was going. So that's on me and that's on the site. Financial support is another one. New innovative programs cost money. I think we learned that through MSA. They founded a foundation that pays for an office manager. I know that one of the problems with the STEM program at San Marin is kind of the coordination of it. Again, it's a lot of work, in that case, a lot of work on Michelle and Nick's part over at San Marin. And I don't know that I would do a program like this again if we didn't get a grant. And that was really why Rob Lippincott was involved, because he supposedly had connections to a lot of the businesses, but none of that ever materialized. The first couple years of the program, you need some money. You probably need, I remember when we started a new tech in my last district, and we got a grant from PG&E for $250,000. And I think that's probably a minimum of what you would need to start a new program, if it's a program like this. But even dual immersion, we're running that on kind of a shoestring budget, but obviously they need curriculum, they need training time during the summer. Those teachers need to go to CABE and they need to learn about that. So financial support, I think, is something we underestimated, and I would make sure that, again, at least the first couple of years, I think you need at least a couple $100,000 to make things work. We also didn't have common expectations and values. Teachers weren't exactly all on the same page. Again, innovative programs are so heavily dependent on the teachers and their personalities and how they all work with each other. Again, more planning time might have helped with that. The last one's teaming and staffing. Again, that collaboration is really key, and you can't really force that. So those are the main lessons that I learned. I can let Mark talk about, we asked the teachers what they learned, and it's disappointing for everyone, especially Glenn. He's taken this pretty hard because this was his idea that, we need to do a better job of. So I'm really sorry that it didn't work out, and I know it's putting our kids through a really tough time. I think it's a growing time and a learning time for them. I think the kids in MBA probably do take more responsibility for their learning and have more student agency than other students, which I think will serve them well in the future. But certainly no one deserves to have the program, the rug pulled out from under them. So those are the lessons we learned from my perspective. I'll let Mark maybe share what some of his lessons learned are.
I think in talking with the teachers and visiting with them around that, the main part was just it started too fast. And if you're going to implement a new program, it's hard to ask teachers to learn it by doing it, because all of a sudden they're in front of kids and they have to perform, and there's learning objectives and there's targets, and they just get bombarded, and so it's hard to learn as you go. So in talking with them, they would have much rather had a whole entire year to just plan and really think through it, figure out funding. Having opened brand new facilities and schools in my past, I was super fortunate to do that. You really need to start looking out to year 3 and 5. What's it going to look like? How are we going to staff for it? What expenses are we going to see in year 3 and 5 as we unpackage these things? And in the effort to get going and the excitement of, hey, we're going to start this great innovative program, they didn't plan for the future. And so teachers have said it would have been really nice in retrospect if we would have just slowed down and done that. So it's a valuable lesson to learn. Certainly going forward, we want to always look at what we're doing and ask hard questions before we ever start doing it, so that we make sure we're just do some better planning and support up front.
Does that conclude? Okay. Somebody, Trustee Millerick and then Trustee Mack, and then Trustee Aguila.
Question is, maybe it's a clarification for the principal. As you are into the academic makeup process, trying to remediate missed lessons, somebody got a D in algebra or something. We have Chromebooks and we've looked at online classes over at Marin Oaks for some are we using methodologies other than stand and deliver teacher in front of the classroom? Are we using online courses or MOOCs or any other methodology to be able to help backfill? And is that something, and it's a loaded question because the question is our high schools going to be moving in that model going forward in general, or is high school really someplace where you need the personal relationship with the teacher is the value proposition?
That's a great question. We do, yes in answer to the first part. We have online platforms and components we currently use. We're vetting one called CyberHigh, which comes out of Fresno County, which is a really good program. We're probably going to migrate to that moving forward. We've been working with the district. It allows a lot greater freedom and access to courses, all A to G approved curriculum, all very viable classes. My belief in doing this work for a long time in innovative schools, one-to-one computing, is you have to have a hybrid model for high school students. They still need a human connection. To just put them online and say good luck, it just doesn't work. And so we do a hybrid model where they have constant access on some regular recurring basis to a teacher to get help, support. Teachers also give them permission to go in and take assessments, so they're in a controlled environment when they do the assessments, and then they can gauge their learning based off of each assessment as they move through those modules. But yes, we have them in place and it's working well. I think the move to Cyber High School will really help us because their licensing practice and their cost are lower than the current platform we're using. So we're looking at maybe making that transition this summer. But a lot of students find great success with that, but definitely very, very few high school students find success if we cut them loose on their own with just the device. So having a teacher is critical.
Trustee Mack.
I just want to say, not question so much as I totally agree with, guilty as charged. I was part of this as well. I sat in all the Charettes. I was extremely excited. I was disappointed we lost Rob. I thought we'd have him for a longer period of time involved. His involvement was key, pretty critical, just as much as Glenn, as far as I'm concerned. And not seeing the money didn't help. In looking back, one other thing that I don't really see on this, maybe it's a subset of what you're talking about, but I think we not only didn't plan long enough, like you said, maybe it should have been 2-3 years like we did with dual immersion, but we ramped up too fast, and I think as well. Going straight to a first class of 90 kids, in retrospect, was probably too much on two different planes, or two different dimensions, if you will. One, it's just too much for us to handle. We weren't ramped up to handle that much that many students. But as well, I don't know if we really had that many students that were ready for this program. I'm fairly convinced that there was a large contingent of that first cohort that really didn't belong in this program, that kind of looked at it as, hey, this looks kind of cool, I'll try it out, but they weren't ready. The kids that were really ready obviously embraced it, but I do believe we had, and I know some of these kids, and they didn't belong in the program, and talking with the families. So I think that's another lesson learned. It falls into the same category about planning, et cetera, but I think, we need to be cognizant of that. All that said, I do really hope that we can take these lessons learned and translate it into trying this again, but much more planned, much more purposeful, and do it in a way that doesn't ramp up so quickly, but starts with a couple small steps, see how it goes, and then go from there. Because obviously, from a scheduling perspective, you can't just throw this thing in the middle of everything. You have to build up to it. So, anyway, just my thoughts.
Trustee Aguila?
Yeah. I just, after hearing both of you today, it just, and it's obvious, but, initiating a new program, new curricula, it's not easy, and it's very complicated, and it's, you need a lot of different points of view, and you need to do a lot of planning and everything. So, in that sense, I really do. I'm happy that we did have it. I think that we should be positive now and say, we were able to have this program. And I personally, I got a lot of emails from parents saying that this program did work and that their students learned a lot. So I think we need to be positive and take these lessons learned and then move forward. And I agree with Trustee Mack that we should, look forward, keep record of what worked, what didn't work, and try it again when the time is right. But most of all, I'd like to thank you for being accountable. I'm one of the trustees here that we all appreciate accountability, and I just really thank you for stepping up and just saying this is what I could have done better. And as a board member, I think that we can all learn and we can always be better. So thank you both for coming up and sharing with us the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Trustee Cooper, and then I'm going to move to the comments.
Thank you both for your insightful and heartfelt, I'm sure, comments. And it's really unfortunate that the program, I was very excited about it. And I was certainly, some of the staff over there, Glenn, I was just totally taken aback with what he was doing with the kids. And I'd like to see us make it happen again if we could, or look into tweaking it somehow. But I think more than anything, two things. One is that you talk about supporting the kids with the D's and the F's, and I want to make sure that we follow those. It's easy to say, well, not that we'll do this, but that, okay, we're going to do all this stuff for these kids, and then possibly we don't follow them, attract them. So let's make sure we do that. That would be great. I think that's real important. And I also think that we need to take an inward look and see, based on your observations here, look again at dual immersion. Just make sure that, all those pieces are in place. Whatever we're learning here, probably we can apply over there, so we don't do it two places. Thank you.
Yeah, well, and actually to that point, in Cabinet today, we just had a long discussion about how to do that. And I think that this has reminded us that you don't just get it started and go, hey, hope it works. What kind of planning support is needed? What kind of support does Melissa need? She's a new principal too. So that's kind of the constant reminder, is that we need to step in and ask hard questions too, which we didn't ask enough of those hard questions in the beginning either, right? To play the devil's advocate, and then once it gets going, what support's needed to make sure that it goes forward. So, yeah.
All right, I'm going to move to our comments. I have 3 comment cards. I have George Pegalo, Maggie Howell, or Maggie, I don't know how. Holy, thank you. And Leslie Robertson. So George, you're first.
I have a gift for the board. I'll give it to Jim. This is one of my favorite quotes. It's only $20. I'll give it to you for $19.95. Engage is the first word in those 3 things on the wall. And I'm going to quote now from an article by James Ford titled "Student-Teacher Relationships Are Everything." And by the way, I was sad to see that there were no student trustees here tonight, even though there were some very important issues that relate to students in a very significant way. So that's disappointing. Students have needs that transcend academics that must be met for learning to happen. These needs aren't in the standards or curriculum. My question to you, and I believe we are allowed to have interchange, were students involved in all this preparation for this program? Were they integrated in all of the planning that went into starting this exciting new venture? Negatory? Okay. So bottom line, when you do something this challenging, you need to have all the stakeholders involved. And if students aren't key stakeholders in this process, I suggest there are no stakeholders in this process. Students should have been involved at the outset. They probably would have detected some of the flaws right away. I don't know, this summit thing, I guess that they probably would have said, you know, this is just not something that I can deal with successfully. It's also important to remember that intrinsic learning is far, far more significant than extrinsic. And it seems like this was implemented in an extrinsic way. Here's what we're going to do. How's it working? They should have been involved from day one, indicating exactly what resonated and what didn't resonate with them. Jim said, we're not meeting the needs of many of our kids. Schools throughout this country are not meeting the needs of many of our kids because there are not personal relationships that make school a place that feels like I belong here because people here who are in authority care about me, know me as a human being. And when I heard this program described, and I was here when they rolled it out, I was led to believe that there would be a 90-minute meeting every day at the beginning of the day where there would be community discussions and so on that would happen. It's just built into the system. I'm not sure that if that happened, but it is so critical if we're going to really make education something that is successful and engaging and inspiring and empowering, that we involve the key stakeholders. And believe me, students are quite capable of giving important insight, wisdom, and guidance in how we proceed in all of the things we do in classrooms, be it in this program or other ones. And we're not taking advantage of an extraordinarily powerful resource. We must change the way we educate by having the key stakeholders at the table much more frequently than we do. And the fact that those 3 seats are empty suggests that we have significant work to do. I'm happy to report that there is work that has been done by my friend Adam Fletcher. Sound out. So I'm hoping to work with you to implement a program starting in the fall where you will have active, engaged, knowledgeable, and wise participants in every board meeting, students who will bring important information to this board that it absolutely needs. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have Leslie and Maggie are the next 2 speakers.
Good evening. Our son is a freshman in NBI, and I have been a local educator for 18 years. I speak tonight for most of our NBI parents when I say that at this point we know the closing of NBI is inevitable. We've heard the reasons and the rationale and what was hopefully learned, and we have given up hope that the outcome will change. But this is what we want you to know, that the way that this was handled was shocking to us as parents and as students. There was no communication with NBI parents or students about the possible closure until we received an email to attend an NBI update meeting. When we walked into the meeting, it was titled the NBI Transition Meeting, where we were told why NBI started, why it was ending, and then quickly moved to the transition plan. And in order for us to even ask any questions, we had to actually interrupt the planned flow of the meeting. We all literally thought that we missed an email or a meeting. Had we been informed that there were significant struggles that administrators were looking at closing NBI, and had we been asked to be part of the solution, then this could be a very different conversation and situation. Maybe this would have been a celebration of overcoming obstacles and celebration of perseverance and problem solving. Maybe this would have been a presentation about a successful, innovative program offered by NUSD that could attract new students to our depleting district. Or maybe at the very least, we could have prepared our students more academically, emotionally, and maybe made a different decision. But that's not what happened, and I think the most deeply disappointing and heartbreaking part of the whole situation was to be told that one of the main reasons for the closure was that there was a known 90% chance of failure of this program, but yet our kids and parents were told just in August that it was going to be fully supported by the administration. They were made a promise by administrators when it was apparently known that it would fail. They deserved to know what was happening, what the future was for the program. And this cannot be how we treat our students and consider our students in the district. They deserved more than that. So our questions to you, trustees, are these. How did this happen? Were you informed that the program was ending, and if so, when? Or are these decisions made by administrators without board approval? How was the progress of the program monitored? And were there any suggestions or guidance given about how to handle the closure? I know this could have been handled more thoughtfully and respectfully, and in particular with more transparency. Please let this be a lesson learned. We have some devastated students on our hands right now. Thank you.
Maggie?
Just to give you a little bit of background. I have been a supporter of this school district, a very, very vocal supporter in Petaluma of this school district, because I had 2 kids go through MSA. I worked very hard to get them there. There was carpooling, there was skateboarding, there was busing, and there continues to be this year. And I've worked this hard because this administration, this school has always answered every question I had. I would go up and I would need a signature and I would get it. I would need a book, I would get it. Everything was answered quickly, and it was so impressive. And this debacle has completely turned me against this entire district. And I hold 2 people responsible, this guy and that guy. This meeting was a sham. And I do want to know what you people had to do with this. What kind of responsibility did you have for how this was ended? I have raised 4 kids in Japan, in New Jersey, in Pennsylvania, and in California. And up until this point, this district was the star of all those places, except maybe the elementary school in Japan. I went through a very innovative program when I was at high school. My senior year, I went to an alternative program in Pennsylvania, and it changed my life. I went to St. John's College after that, and then I moved to Japan. And I've had a very successful life, and I think it was that program that changed me. And the fact that you are so easily giving up on this is disgraceful. It was hard, is all I keep hearing. It's hard, it's hard, it's hard. And I agree with this gentleman that if you had involved the students more, including in this transition phase, it would have been a lot better. And I feel completely sideswiped, blindsided by this act. And I will no longer support this district or say anything about NHS that is positive. And it's because of the administration. The teachers have been fantastic. My kid got straight A's through this program. And I think it was very clear how to get straight A's through this program. He actually did make those connections with those teachers. And to have this ripped out from underneath him by people he has rarely seen, the principal and the superintendent, who became the face of shutting this program down, it has really affected him and how he sees school. And we are going out of this district, and we will probably not be back. And it is because of the way this was handled. And I think whatever you people had to do with it, you should really look and see how you could have acted differently as school board members. I believe that this could have been a positive program. I think it could have continued if there had been the will in the administration to continue it. And the buy-in with the parents. We were told nothing before transition. Are you kidding me? I have never seen anything like this in all my 27 years of being a parent of a school kid. So I'm sorry, but I am so done.
All right, any further comments from the board? Back to you. Wait, this is Trustee Nell.
I kind of wanted to talk to the board, suggest the how we're supporting the students, we sort of conclude with Anna McGee as counselor, and I'm just wondering if maybe we could ask for this report to come back on this particular cohort. I think some accountabilities in order, and the way that this proposal sort of reads, it says we're going to do these things, and then it just stops there.
Sure.
So if the board thinks it's a good idea, that perhaps we could ask our officers to work out a timetable, and maybe the board, the superintendent can bring something back on, report on this, on how it's going with this cohort. That's it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
How does the board feel about that? Yeah. I think we got to do that. That's absolute.
I think there's important lessons to be learned from this, and we need to learn as much as we possibly can, particularly in light of the dual immersion program. Any innovative program, the superintendent was clear, any innovative program we have not planned well enough, and we have one more coming, and we should have a protocol for doing that. And so that one I'm concerned about, based on the comments tonight.
Right.
And in this particular one, I'd like, after I listened to what's happened and learned some more, I probably want to reflect on it again. But my understanding is we're down the road on this, it's closing. There isn't, we're not in a position where we can reverse that decision, and I'm not saying we should. This is where we are.
Right.
So.
Trustee Gasson.
So I'll just kind of speak as a parent, and I've only been up here since December, but what my observation is that I think that it's easy to be in an environment and think that everything's being communicated out to parents and families, and that there might be an awareness, but I think that it doesn't, what seems normal or common knowledge doesn't get out to the parents, whether it's from lack of effort or, just parents not reading information. It doesn't really matter. But I was thinking of just in listening to the parents speaking that, getting caught off guard is never fun. And I know that, that certainly wasn't intended, and I expect that there just might not have been, I think Leslie's great, maybe having like a step-by-step when we're doing things, making sure it goes out in certain places, or that there's some kind of discussion or information available, and that somebody looks at it and thinks, okay, if I've got this hat on, how does, can I understand this, or does this make sense? Just kind of revisiting and making sure that, there's not a presumption that there's information out there already about certain things. I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like I get caught off guard a couple of times. It feels like everybody else knows something and I didn't know, and I'm like, well, how, I never heard about it. I didn't, and just trying to get that information out so that people kind of have an idea and don't get the rug pulled out from under them. And actually, the whole grade thing too. We just recently got a message about Aries that was very helpful, because as I told you before, I wasn't aware that my daughter wasn't doing very well, and apparently there's a whole system where I can get alerts and stuff like that. So just, I know that that's not the reason the program is, it's just one of the reasons, but, if I didn't know my kid wasn't doing, or I may not have known my kid was doing well, not that it's an excuse, but, that's also a part of just missing something. So anyway,
Thank you for that. Anybody else? Okay. I think the direction from the board, as you heard, is to have something come back on the outcome of the students to make sure they are taken care of. And I want to apologize to the students. I think that's first and foremost. We don't like to see a program go away, disappear. We pride ourselves on unique programs and great learning environments, and this was one of them that could have been that. We screwed up. We did. I mean, we know what to do going forward. It's lessons learned. And definitely the student needs to be at the forefront of our decision-making and our processes as we go through bringing new programs in, or anything that we introduce, that the student is at the table. So.
Yeah, I value everything you just said.
Except?
I'm going,
No.
no, not except. I think the follow-up is going to be important, not just for the students. I think we need to do a stand down on how we run programs. I mean, I'm going to end up, I have a meeting tomorrow morning with one of the parents of of the MBI club, and I've already had one, and I'm going to have, this is going to be an uncomfortable visit, and I would like to be able to say that we understand what structurally we did not do well and what structural measures we're going to institute as a district in order to make sure we catch these. If somebody's getting D's and F's, we catch them in the first year, not the second year. Way more than that, and I'd like to have that report come back, because I'm going to have a very uncomfortable conversation, and I don't have good answers right now.
Right.
All I know is it's, you know, it didn't work, and I don't have good answers, and I would like to be able to say, here's the lessons we've learned, and here's what we're doing to make it better. So I'm hoping that's what comes back in the report.
Okay. Trustee Aguila?
So, so like I said before, I appreciate accountability, and I thank you for coming up. I was very, you know, because I say that doesn't mean that that I'm giving up. I clearly said that we should take this opportunity to learn from our lessons, and you have, you know, we've noted down some things that need to be changed, and so I wanted to say that, and this is a question that we don't need to answer now, but it's also a good question for us as board members and as teachers, as the community, parents. At what point do we start a program, and if it doesn't for whatever reason because not every program that we present it's a guarantee that's going to work, right? And I'm not giving excuses at all. I'm just talking about future programs and future programs that we are going to bring forward. At what point is it that we introduce this program in hopes that it will work, and then having it hopefully working and maybe not working? So if we can be clear also in the future about, hey, this is a pilot program, for example, and maybe we don't want to call it that, but that we can say, you know, this is, and we're definitely not experimenting with children, and we definitely need to do our part in order for a program to work, right? So, I'm curious about at what point, and if we can just kind of analyze this, do we say this is going to work, this is not going to work, this is a pilot, or this is for a certain amount of students, and this is for, you know, whatever we need to do, like we need to do testing for students before they enter into this program, or whatever it is, you know, maybe we can look into that too. So,
All right, thank you. All right, so I'm going to move on. We've concluded this discussion. This was a staff report, and I want to thank the parents. You know, I would be in your shoes if I was my child coming to the board meetings and speaking up and advocating. So thank you for being here and speaking your point and your viewpoint to the board. We really appreciate that. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we had one more staff report. It's the school enrollment and capacity, and then I'm going to go back to the remaining discussion action items. So we'll do 14B, the school enrollment and capacity for 2019-20 school year, and Chris Koska will be presenting that.
All right. Hi, everybody. So each year we bring this school enrollment and capacity report. One of our trustees, Trustee Gasson, pointed out that maybe we should consider retitling this a little bit because it can be misleading. This is a report that's required as a result of our intra-district board policies. It's this time of year we need to bring this to sort of let the community know what schools we anticipate having space at and about how much space we anticipate that we will have. The way that we calculate the enrollment is we use our enrollment projections that we start working on in December. we roll out to our principals. We'll continue to refine those, but these are our most current enrollment projections for next year. Then we figure out what our preliminary staffing report says, how many teachers we believe that we'll have, and then we do some calculations. Depending on the level, it looks a little bit different. At K3, we do a calculation of the number of teachers assigned to the school times 22 for K3, and then number of teachers assigned to the school for grades 4 and 5 times 28. And so that helps us figure out the capacity side. Then we use the enrollment projections, and then the difference is the amount of space we anticipate having in those classrooms. So this really pertains to staffing capacity more than it pertains to the capacity of a campus to be able to hold more students. As we've discussed, we're in declining enrollment. So most of our campuses have significantly more empty space that doesn't show up on this report. As you review the board document that's before you, you see that on most of our campuses we have between 5 and 20 spaces available across the grade spans that those schools have. The outlier would be San Jose Middle School. We have some work to do in getting alignment between staffing and enrollment. We're working with the principal there to get that in line. So our report shows that there are going to be some spots available for transfers of students. Not a whole awful lot. We are staffing tightly. We're trying to be the best, trying to be as efficient as we can in running our schools and having our class sizes close to those averages of 22 in the primary grades and 28 in the secondary, in the 28 beyond that in the elementary schools, and then our other staffing ratios at middle and high. So that was a lot of blathering on. So I would wonder if I know. Bazinga.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Questions, Trustee Gasson and then Trustee Millerick.
So actually, I hadn't noticed this until I looked at it again right now, so thank you for clarifying the information for me. What happens in the situation, like I'm looking at the middle school, San Jose Middle and Sinaloa, so you only have 3 potential spaces and you have 121. I mean, what happens with, that's a lot of potential space, right?
So we've got to continue to monitor staffing. And so
you should just change the staffing then if it...
We could potentially, but what you see is Sinaloa is accurately staffed, although it's very, very tight. We've got to keep an eye on that. And San Jose is currently overstaffed. Of course, this doesn't take into account any resignations or retirements that we might have on those campuses. That would, if we have a resignation or retirement at San Jose, for example, that would help to correct for that overage there. We're going to be okay.
So one other question,
we could move teachers from campuses to campuses as long as they have the appropriate credential.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess that also just led me in my head to think, if you've got kids that are supposed to be at San Jose and there's 3 spots, do you still let them go to, I have that the wrong way. If you have kids that are in San Jose and there's 3 spots, just hypothetical based on that, this isn't.
We don't want to fill a school. We don't ever want to have a school filled through the intra-district transfer process, because then if new folks move in over the summer that are neighborhood kids, so we have to be thoughtful about having some vacancies on each campus for neighborhood children who move in.
Okay. Okay, so it wouldn't just be granted, it would.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. That does make me think of something I'll touch on quickly if I can remember exactly what it is. And I guess I won't touch on it quickly because I can't.
Trustee Millerick? Oh, Trustee Mack.
Just a quick question. So would the discrepancy, I guess, say at San Jose, be more a reflection of us just kind of getting the ADA a little overestimated before we effectively assign teachers to the campus?
It has to do with the number of teachers assigned to that campus currently, and that's more than we need on that campus, and we just haven't made that adjustment yet.
But I'm just saying, did we initially assign those teachers based on a higher attendance estimate initially, and basically San Jose got hit a little harder than we expected in terms of declining enrollment?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure I got that right.
Yep.
Trustee Cooper?
So, my question is about San Marin High.
Mm-hmm.
So what are essentially, if everybody shows up, those four, we would have 4 intra-district transfers out to Nevada?
We would have to increase staffing.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a couple ways we could do that. We could hire another teacher, which is typically,
Bring
if
one
it's, if the number gets to that point, or we could have a teacher teach a 1.2. They could teach a 6th section, which we try to avoid, but sometimes that's a tool that we have in our toolbox.
Good solution, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else? This is a staff report that comes forward each year. Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Going back to our discussion action items, we'll move to item 13D, the approval of contracts for E-rate filing, and you have a copy at your table.
All right, thank you. There is 2 items that I've updated. The first, in the initial package, there was a draft contract for the 10-year agreement around the dark fiber solution to the Marin County Office of Education. The copy you have today is the updated version of that contract, and it just reflects some minor non-substantive changes as requested by our legal team on a few issues. One of which Trustee Millerick noted was the original contract arguably would not have allowed the contract to be on a public agenda because of its non-disclosure requirements. So we specifically put in an item that said it could be in the minor details. But the other thing, and it's much more significant issue, not in terms of dollars, but in terms of bandwidth, is there was a mistake that noted that the second line was a 1 gigabit circuit. And because of E-rate rules, and I won't get into the specifics of it, but for it to be E-ratable, the load balancing line has to be the same size as the regular line. And so instead of a 1 gigabyte line for about $980 a month, we are actually getting a 10 gigabit line for $980 per month. So that was one of those errors that usually doesn't happen in your favor. So I did want to note that. So there really are 3 different things that the board is approving here. 2 fall under the ongoing C1 funding. The first is it's a $180,000 contract to build a 10-year dark fiber connection with MCOE. After our discounts, that will be $36,000. And how our discounts work is E-rate due to our based on our level of free and reduced population is a 60% discount on those services. And then the California Interconnect Fund is an additional 50% reduction. So 60% and then 50% of that X. So 20% is what's left over. So it's a $36,000 contract with a very minor monthly service charge, less than about $500 a year on that charge. Our second line, which is an additional 10 gigabit, that is a 3-year agreement with Sonic as well. It's through a standard telecom agreement, so I didn't note it. I didn't put it in the package, but that agreement is for $980 a month. To be totally transparent, that is based on our current level of free and reduced, which is a little bit over 36%. There is a cutoff at 34.5%, which our discount would move from 60 to 50%. But I did want to note that is in future years, if our free and reduced count does reduce, it would increase potentially by a maximum of about $2,500 a year. But overall, between our 2 connections, we will be paying about 1/3 less than what we are paying now. And instead of a 4 gigabit connection, we will have a 20 gigabit connection over the 2 items, or the two connections. The last is using up the rest of our C2 funding. This is currently being for use for wireless access points and UPSs, which are battery backups. And so basically, we have $330,000 of eligibility. And when I say that eligibility, that means the 60% of that that we can get funded. And we're using bond funds to maximize that equipment. It's part of the IT infrastructure budget. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to questions. This is the same item that Tim Rocco brought
Right.
last week with that one adjustment.
Trustee Cooper?
So, what a deal. It's only $85 a month.
Yeah, it's
Sounds like a great deal. There is the one upfront payment.
Yeah.
But so, in terms of maintenance of it, or anything goes wrong during that life of the lease, are they, Sonic is obligated to repair it? Do we have any
they're obligated,
obligations?
yes. Yep.
Right, that's what I was thinking, but I just want to make sure we're not financially, it does seem unreasonable.
Yep.
$85. Well, whoever negotiated that, good job.
That Tim Rocco and his team, with some support from Trustee Millerick,
Indeed.
did some great work there. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, and that, I will move.
Okay. Okay. Shut him down, Diane. Go ahead. All right, Trustee Miller.
I'll make it first, and with a second from Tom, is that okay? Yeah. And I wanted to go over the second piece just for the board.
Yeah.
Trustee Mack, we were talking earlier about Wi-Fi and where we stand on Wi-Fi. And the Wi-Fi, that box over the top of the screen, that little thing in the ceiling that connects to all your cell phones. So basically, that technology is moving forward very fast, and in the year 2019, the year we end, there's new standards that are coming out that will double the bandwidth that's available. 2 new FCCs authorized, 2 new frequency bands that they're going to release in the next 5 years. The chips are in this year being built that will actually work in that frequency, and the capacity is probably double what was available December 2018. And that technology is the work Tim's been doing with the vendors to make sure we are buying at the very front of the leading edge of the new technology, as opposed to the back of the stuff that in 6 months from now will be on eBay for $15 a piece. So Tim's done a really good job of making sure that we're protecting the district's interests. So I just wanted everybody to hear the quality work that our staff has done in terms of protecting our financial interests. And in this case, E-rate's picking it up. And it's either use it or lose it money today, I believe, right? We don't approve this, the money's gone.
If we don't approve this, our eligibility is gone.
So I voted, I moved, we fixed our money. Vote now.
Trustee Aguila has a comment.
I just wanted to thank you for finding this kind of, and I wanted to thank Trustee Millerick for his time and sharing. I know that you've been involved in a lot of the meetings, and you were very involved. So thank you.
Great. So we have a first by Trustee Millerick, a second by Trustee Cooper. This is approval of the contract with Sonic and the purchase of wireless access points and battery backup hardware. All those in favor? 7-0.
So to be clear, the fiber circuit's gonna take a year to build. They have to actually put copper on hold. It'll be a year before it turns out.
Yeah, and then we'll come back with a timing of potentially the other one, but we might have some E-rate. It might be at the exact same time, but if we can do it earlier, we will.
All right, moving on to the
Can I
next.
just ask a quick question then?
Yes.
So when do we save money then? Not for a year?
Starting, depending on the implementation, but definitely at least half of next year, we will be saving money.
Oh, okay.
Or 4 months of next year. It's already off.
Yeah, Tim's gonna do some detailed planning, and we can go back with some times, some change. I don't want to commit him to work that he doesn't even know he's got to do yet.
All right, moving on to item 13E, again, discussion action. You have a copy on your desk. I'm going to turn this over to Trustee Aguila. I'm going to continue to recuse myself on this item, and I will come back for the last item.
Okay. So, thank you for being here.
Sure. Y'all ready to
And,
talk some CEQA?
Go ahead.
So very similar to what we did a couple months ago with the two high school sites with the capital improvement projects there. Very similar process. We hired our environmental firm that you approved previously, Grissetti Environmental Consulting, to do the CEQA required process to evaluate the proposed project for the ground maintenance and operation facility that's located on the parcel 1A property off of C Street to look for any environmental impacts. So what we did is created a draft environmental study, which is what I'm bringing before you tonight, seeking your approval for that. Before I get into details, though, I humbly apologize. As we did our last review of this 93-page document, the day it was posted, we found 6 errors or typos, if you will. I can go through each one specifically if you'd like the detail, or I can just summarize it in saying that the tables with the X's that mark the impacts now match the paragraph descriptors with the tables. We had 6 areas where those were mismatched. For instance, there'd be an X in a no impact box and actually was less than significant impact. Very minor corrections, but now the table impacts with the X's match the descriptors that explain in detail why that X is done. So apologize for that, which is why you have a new copy in front of you. It's the updated, correct copy, not the one that was posted and given to you last Friday. With that said, we found 6 environmental areas that would be potentially impacted by this project. The good news is all 6 can be mitigated through proper steps, either through construction or some further studies in the cultural and biological areas. Because we can mitigate all those steps down to less than significant impacts, we are recommending proceeding with a mitigated negative declaration. Based on that, process-wise, what we would like to do is we receive board approval tonight for the initial study. We go out for public agency comment and public comment at the same time in parallel efforts. It's a 30-day comment period. We post this to the clearinghouse for public agencies throughout the state, and then we also advertise in the paper and post it in a public setting for the public to read, review, and comment. At the end of 30 days, we collect those comments if there are any. We review them for any potential changes to our initial study, and we'll bring this back to the board for final approval of the initial study, proceeding with that mitigated negative declaration. So that's the entire process. So again, tonight, seeking approval for this draft initial study. That gives us the okay to go out for public comment period. Happy to answer any questions.
Is the 30-day, does that start as of today?
No, it starts as of when we post to the clearinghouse and when we advertise, the first day we advertise in the paper. We're trying to get that for, I believe, Thursday or Friday of this week.
Okay.
End of this week.
Great, thank you. Yes, Trustee Mack.
Just a quick question on the mitigations. Are they going to impact the budget much?
No. Actually, in the budget planning process, we knew that this area had some lovely history with the previous base being there. And we allocated, I think, the proper resources to do what we thought we'd need to do. Some biological studies for wildlife impacts. Actually, we actually saved some money by having all that depth of detail from the continued Department of Defense monitoring of their things, and also the cultural and historical impacts. We have people on call if we find, for instance, fossil or anything of other impact historically.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, I have one question.
Trustee Cooper?
So nothing potential, I don't see anything potentially significant. There were no findings for that column, right?
No, well, there were things that initially hit that, and then we had mitigated steps to bring it down to a lower, less than significant impact. So no, nothing that stands as potential.
And I'm surprised that we didn't hear from Graydon Rancheria because we did on San Andreas.
Oh.
But that's.
I think in this case, we did have a lot of documentation already from a lot of, this site's been studied a lot for environmental impacts.
Yeah, you're probably right. Thanks.
There's still some stuff there, but it's completely safe from this project.
I have a question.
Yes.
For page 39, letter F, you talk about directly or indirectly destroy a unique paleontological resource or site or unique geologic feature. Can you go into that a little bit?
Actually, that's one of the corrections. The X should be in the no impact.
Okay.
Basically, it means the site we're proposing to build this facility is on the existing site of the previous Navy Exchange or Commissary, I forget which one. So we're actually building on the old slab of that building. So a building that was previously there's no unique resource or site thing that's already there because it was just a previous building that was there that's already been demolished.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. And is page 73, B and C, is that also to be no impact?
No, those are still listed as less than significant impact, which is, there were some minor areas that we wanted to look at, so that didn't meet the no impact requirements, but definitely below the significant level.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Okay. So it's an action item. Okay. Trustee Mack. Okay. Trustee Cooper. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All in favor? Okay. Any against? All right. 6 and then 1. Yes. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to our last item. This is approval of the 2020-21 school calendar. Chris Koska will be presenting that.
All right, so on July 1st, there will be no school. On July 2nd, there will be no school. You don't want me to go through it date by date? You want me to take a different approach? Okay. I'll take a different approach. Yeah, I guess it's getting late. So, to those of you who have sat through a lot of these conversations about the school calendars, there are difficult years and there are easy years with the school calendar. We're lucky that in 1920 and in 21 we've sort of fallen into those easy years where it's easy to schedule our breaks. They fall naturally. The start time of the year falls well. This is one of those easy years. We meet with representatives from CSEA, NFT, administration. We sent out a draft of this calendar to those 3 different constituent groups. The only feedback that we got was that it looks good. So this is one of those easy calendars. So there is one topic I want to touch on though. We've had feedback from the community that we need to take religious holidays more into consideration when we're building our calendars. And so what I want to share with you is that when we build this calendar only with national holidays in mind. So all the holidays that are represented on here are national holidays. What I am going to do, however, is send each of our principals and office managers a list of major religious holidays that happen in the 2 future years that we have calendars for, in 1920 and in 2021, and ask the schools to be as thoughtful as they can be about scheduling events around those important religious holidays, because we want to make sure that we are being as responsive as we can to our community in support of their needs.
Great. Appreciate you addressing that because we do get emails periodically about that. Mm-hmm. Whoa. I got all these hands down there.
Oh.
Trustee Gasson always wants to leave on time, and she's the one raising her hand. No, go ahead.
It's because I had a statement. So as a mom, I appreciate how this came out, and I didn't realize it was an easy year to calendar, but thank you, because all of those little short days and stuff this year, and it was just brutal. In fact, we had one yesterday, and I found out from Pleasant Valley that everybody did get picked up. I suspect everybody at Sinaloa did not, because I actually got a parking spot in front of the school right before the bell rang. So anyway, I love this, and I also think, again, as speaking as a parent, when you do the Friday days, which I'm sure you had a lot of different input, you can never make everybody happy, but that is so much easier than when we do those Thursdays,
okay.
because not everybody, but people just look at it and go, I'm gonna take Thursday off too. So anyway,
Okay.
I appreciate, that was my only, I
All
wanted
right.
to say thank you.
Good. Thank you for that feedback.
Anybody else who had, okay.
I'll second.
First by trustee Millerick, a second by trustee Aguila. All those in favor? 7-0. Okay. I want to, we finally have a little bit of a break. We've had 4 board meetings straight in a row here. So the next board meeting is the regular board meeting.
Consent item G.
Oh, gee, darn. I thought we were going home.
It'll take 2 seconds.
No. Consent
I know
item
Mike was
G.
concerned, but hurry up.
Who wants to talk about CEQA again?
Yeah, I just didn't get enough.
Trustee Miller, can you sit down? Yes, I will. I'll announce it. Are you leaving right now? Okay.
You can.
Yes, it is.
All right, Mike. The only.
No pressure. Got it.
The only reason I, Madam President, pulled this was because I thought, just in the interest of, because these are sometimes very sensitive, and in the interest of full disclosure, full transparency, why this project is exempt from CEQA, and I just want to put that out there publicly for everybody. You know, we're trying to do the right thing. So.
Sure. Under the CEQA guidelines and process, there are a couple of published exemptions, and one of them is this Class 4 exemption for minor alterations to land. And this project was compared to those requirements to see if it was exempt. And as part of the attachment, Garcetti, again, who did it, did a nice analysis. And I think there was a 5-part requirement you have to meet to qualify for this exemption. And we went requirement by requirement, and this project met all those, which is why they are recommending we apply the exemption. With that said, we also looked at cumulative impact to the other projects going on at Novato High School, and this project does not add significantly any cumulative impact to all the other work. So from that perspective is why we're pursuing this particular exemption.
That's all. I just want to clarify for public, for the public to know what we're doing and why
Sure.
that's happening. Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you. Would you like to move on that?
I would like to move adoption of, sorry, it's late. Item G, consent item G.
15G, okay.
15G.
All right.
I'll
So
second that.
All right, a first by trustee Cooper, a second by trustee Nell. All those in favor? 7-0.
Thank you.
All right, so that concludes our meeting. We have remind the board, a special board meeting scheduled for Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. That'll get posted for sure before, obviously, 9 o'clock tomorrow. And our next regular scheduled board meeting is April 2nd. This meeting is adjourned.